Good morning, everyone. I call our recess meeting back to order at this time. Turn it over to Mr. Lang.
Okay, thank you. If we could, I guess, Mary, will you give us an invocation? God, that's all right.
Our fathers, we come together today. We come together to make tough decisions, Lord, of what to fund and what not to fund. But God, may we just remember we do what's right, do the best we can for those that we can. Just be with us as we go through this meeting. Keep us close to you. And God, as we go through this Holy Week, Lord, as we remember that you sacrificed your Son for us,
Amen.
may we be grateful. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen, amen.
You didn't say anything, Mary, about good Lord taking the sheriff's gun for about a week.
We'll just wait and see.
At least when he's around the manager, anyway.
Or any of us.
We're fine, we're fine,
But I
we'll be
asked him to
good.
get us
Oh,
through this,
look,
right?
they went and eat dinner together last
No,
night,
we didn't.
apparently,
No, we didn't.
based on the email.
No, we didn't.
It's cold in here. Yeah.
got hot yesterday.
I just hoped.
The first thing we're gonna do today, our finance director, Ms. Wood, and myself and Stacy felt that the board needed a updated look at our financial position. We have several projects in the future that we need to look at that may require borrowing. The new school in the northern part of the county, probably a year or two away, but also the possibility of financing the radio upgrades. And so we wanted Ted and Janice to give us an update on our financial situation. We gave them an hour. It's a lot of good information here, and it may be tedious, but I think it's very important. So at this time, we welcome Mr. Cole
All right, thank you.
and Chad.
Chazo
Chazo.
Havliston.
Okay.
Do you want me to stand up there, or is that, is that?
Do you need a microphone or?
I don't think so.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
unless you would rather just stand at the end of the table right there and.
No, I'll just do it right here,
Okay.
that's fine.
Seems so far.
Good.
Good.
I think everybody has a hard copy here, and there are page numbers in the lower right corner. We're only gonna go through this front section, and as Z said, some of it may be tedious, but we'll sort of work through it. Many of you have seen elements of this before, so hopefully some of it will ring a bell, and if there are questions along the way or things you'd like to dig into, please stop me. We've got on page 2 some basic topics for discussion. We're going to talk a little bit about the county's bond rating, and also introduce some peer comparatives, other counties that we can look at when we're looking at certain financial measures to compare you all. We're going to talk a little bit about your general fund financial history and the fund balance trends, and then we're going to get into your existing tax-supported debt, everything that's on the books today, some key financial ratios. You all have some financial policies, and we're going to talk about 2 very basic concepts. The first is debt capacity. That is, if you are considering certain projects in the future that might require debt, is it reasonable to be thinking about taking on additional debt within the confines of those ratios or those policies? And then affordability, how do you pay for it? And they're related but different. So, people have debt capacity, but whether or not it's really affordable is more of a subjective question, right? And then we're gonna, as Z alluded, there are a number of projects that are on a list, and we've just worked with staff to take that list as it exists today and model it up. And so I guess I would just say on the front end that it is not a recommended capital improvement program that we're saying this is what you should move forward with. I think, Z, it's really to put these things on the table so that you all can begin to look at them and prioritize and do some other things with them. Okay? So on the bond rating on page 4, on the right-hand, upper right-hand side of the page, 3 national rating agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's are the 2 most commonly used, and you have ratings from both. You're a AA2 from Moody's and a AA- from S&P. So you're 2 to 3 notches away from the highest bond rating that a local government can achieve, which is AAA. You'll see on the left-hand side, both of these ratings were last affirmed, and write-ups were provided as recently as 2017, but going back to 2013 when you all sold your last bond issue. It is not uncommon for the rating agencies to have you at slightly different levels. It happens from time to time. Going forward in this book, we subscribe to a database that Moody's maintains, so we're going to focus on that Moody's rating. And when you look at the left-hand side, we've got national counties. These are counties that Moody's rates as either AAA, which there are a little over 100 of those across the country. Happens to be 9 of them in North Carolina. 9, so almost 10% of the counties that are rated AAA in the United States are in North Carolina. AA1, there's 112 counties, and AA2, there's 292 counties, one of which is you all. And then within North Carolina, you can see the AAA counties, the AA1 counties, and the AA2 counties. So for you all, the next step is AA1, and as you probably would expect, it gets harder and harder to make those movements as you're getting in that higher end of the scale. We've talked with staff about this. We think there's an opportunity to try to improve, particularly that S&P rating. At the end of the day, a higher bond rating will get you a lower borrowing rate. It's hard to measure exactly what one move like that might mean, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Any questions on that, sort of that universe of ratings? We did provide on page 5, and I realize the type is really small here, but we did provide a listing, and we organized it by size for counties. This is just counties. We don't look at cities and towns when we're looking at a county because there's just fundamental differences. But we have shown by population range all the North Carolina counties that have ratings. You'll see most of them have a Moody's rating, but some of them only have an S&P rating, a few have a Fitch rating. It's a little bit of a mixed bag, but you can get a sense if you want to kind of compare yourselves to other places. You can get a sense of how their ratings look.
I think you had a question.
Sure.
Did you have?
No, I'm gonna wait till the end
Okay.
rather than interrupt you. Are you gonna read this to us, Ted?
Which one?
This one, are we supposed to be able to read it?
You want my book?
I'm having trouble reading it, so going forward, we might be going to bigger books, but
This is okay.
But we do have it electronically, I think, Donna, that we could forward it if there, you could blow it up on the screen. You'll see, you all are on the left-hand side, line 30,
Yeah, see that?
maybe line 80, I don't know, but, okay?
And that's based on population. We're the
Yeah, it's
30th
organized by
largest.
population, from the largest to the smallest.
94,300.
Okay. The next couple of pages, pages 6, 7, and 8, are the cover sheets from the last rating reports. The full reports are in the back of the book, so if you want to read the full report, you'll find those in the appendix. But what you'll see, going back to 2013 on page 6, this is from Moody's. I believe this is when we sold the, maybe the community college bonds. I think that's what it was in 2013. You'll see what they consider your strengths: high level of liquidity, that's cash; your favorable location. The challenges were at that time was unemployment and certain socioeconomic statistics. They're usually looking at things like median family income and median household income in that category. What could make the rating go up? Improvement in fund balance, growth in the tax base, diversification. What could make it go down? A decline in your financial position, which is primarily liquidity, fund balance, or tax base. So you kind of get a little bit of a guide of sort of what they see as your strengths and weaknesses. They updated that on page 7. This is again a Moody's report. If you're not in the market on a regular basis or every year, they're going to do a report on you regardless, Moody's is. So that's why there's a May of 17. So it's a little more current, but you know, the theme is still generally the same. And then lastly, on page 8 is the S&P write-up, the cover from 2013. And you can see on the upper right-hand side, S&P uses terms, these are very specific. The best term you can get for one of their areas of focus is very strong, then you're strong, then you're adequate, weak, or very weak. And really what you see here is, for the most part, it's the economy component of the rating that they're considering here to be very weak. And that's one where, again, they're picking up on wealth levels and unemployment levels and things like that. Now, remember, this is 2013. And you're going to see here in a moment, if you flip to page 9, and you let's look at the right-hand side of page 9. The rating agencies have evolved to a more scorecard-oriented, very quantitative, data-driven rating process, and both of them, Moody's and S&P, in 2013 and 2014, rolled out a new methodology for local government bond ratings, and you can see they have a series of factors that they consider. Moody's happens to have 4, S&P has 7, but they get to about the same place. And economy is 30% of the rating. So remember, that commentary from S&P was a weak economy. That's 30% of the rating. So one of the things moving forward, as remember that was 2013, as we evolved to 2018 and beyond, is revisiting that, and maybe there's an opportunity to have an improved score for the economy, which is 30%, but you'll also see that management, finances, and debt are between 20 and 30%, and you all have performed well there as well, or as well. Some of these credit factors you all can control, relatively speaking, in the short term. So through your budgeting process, you do have some control over what debt you do, or what you might do with fund balance. The economy is much harder to influence in any short period of time. Obviously, you do what you can to promote growth or diversification or job creation, but it isn't the kind of thing that happens quickly or overnight. It's more of a longer term process.
Ted, I would bring the commissioner's attention on page 8 to the part on the left under very weak economy.
Right.
It was a snapshot in June, I think, of 13. And those numbers have really improved, like unemployment.
That's right.
And also it said that property reval, it's remained flat. Well, we are seeing increased tax base now. So that one area that's dragging us down is the one area that I think a reevaluation of our rating would improve.
Yeah, we're 5 years removed from when this report was written, and there have been positive things that have occurred in the economy. So to Z's point, absolutely, it is going to be a process that's worth looking at as you move forward with S&P, and it doesn't necessarily have to coincide with doing a bond issue or issuing debt. You can reach out to them on a more regular basis. They do look at audits every year. They get your audit, and they're putting that into their database, but they don't always necessarily proactively move to make changes. So something moving forward we may talk to staff about is reaching out to them.
Well, what do they classify a weak economy as?
Well, they get a number of, they pull data themselves.
Unemployment, is it unemployment?
It's a combination of things. It's unemployment levels, it's certain wealth levels. So again, median family income or median household income, they look at that as a percent of the state and a percent of the United States. They look at, you know, they might pull census data or the other resources, the American Community Survey, which I think is a census-related entity that pulls data on a more frequent basis than what census does. So it's those sorts of things. Diversification in the tax base, you know, the concentration you might have for your largest employers or taxpayers, things like that. Okay? What I would suggest we look at is, let's go to page 12. What you've got on page 12 is it's the restatement of, where it's really just, you know, putting in place directly from your audits the last 5 years of general fund financials. So you can see fiscal year 13 to 17. The top third of this page through line 10 are your general fund revenues. So you can kind of see how those revenues have evolved year over year. Line 10 is the total general fund revenues. The middle of the page, lines 12 to 24 are your general fund expenditures. So again, you can see how expenditures have evolved year over year, or how individual line items have evolved. And then line 26 is where you're showing revenues either being over or under expenditures. What we're getting to here is just the general fund financial performance. And the bottom page is tracking fund balance, okay? And you kind of look at this, your revenues have been growing, so too have your expenditures. But of these 5 years, 4 of the 5 years, you've had a positive variance on revenues versus expenditures, and you've grown fund balance in, you know, or moderately drawn on fund balance in 16 over these 5 years. Okay. If you go to page 13, you'll see the fund balance in a little.
If I may, on 12, and I hate to interrupt, but
Yep.
the 1 year that we had revenues,
Expenditure is more than revenue.
yeah, in 15, you'll notice transfers out. Y'all transferred a lot of money out and reserved it, and so I think that's reflective of that.
We had a reason we did that, didn't we? Somebody was talking to us about our fund balance.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. If you look on page 13, and I would suggest you look at that upper right chart. This is your fund balance as a percent of expenditures. And this is the methodology by which you all have a policy where that should be at least 15%. The unassigned fund balance, which is the component of fund balance that has the least restrictions, you all have the most discretion over. That's the kind of the dark green line in that upper right corner. That your policy says that should be no less than 15%. So you can see every year it's been well above that, and the trend has been in an upward direction. Page 13. So that, and then we also classify fund balance a few other ways. We look at total fund balance. We look at something called available fund balance. All of these are just different measures of measuring your liquidity. But again, that dark green line is that unassigned fund balance tied to your policy. The trend has been good. If you want to see that number on the left, it's line 11. Again, that's straight from your audit. Remember, with accounting practices, you have different categories of fund balance. The unassigned is on line 11. So you can see over this 5 years, that balance has evolved from, let's call it 23 million up to 30. And your total fund balance has moved from 34 to 42. And then even as we measure it as a percent of budget, you have had a growing budget, but even so, your percentage is getting greater. So the growth at which you are of building reserves is outpacing the growth of your budget, which is positive. Certainly gives you all some flexibility and some options moving forward about how to deal with budget and these other needs. Okay. The last thing on fund balance is on page 14. There's a lot of information on here. This is where we pull in data from that Moody's database. And so let me start, just if I could, in the upper right chart. that is your unassigned fund balance from the last audit, right? So remember, that was $30 million. And that chart is measuring dollars in millions. So the gold bar is Nash County, that's your 30 million unassigned fund balance. And then the light green bars is the median measurement for those national counties that are either AAA, AA1, or AA2. And remember, with a median, if there's 100 counties, half of them will be higher than the median and half will be lower. So on a dollar basis, you compare, you're really right on top of the national AA1 median. The dark green bars are North Carolina counties. And again, you can see you're just somewhere between the North Carolina AA1 and AA2 median when we're measuring this in dollars. Directly below it, we're measuring it as a percent of your budget, which is a better comparison. It's accounting for size, and you can see in that case, you are above all of those medians. And you can see in the small chart below there, you can kind of see the max and the min for all of those categories. So the North Carolina AAAs, the median looks to be about 15%. The maximum is 30%, and the median is about 4%. Excuse me, the minimum is about 4%. So the key takeaway here is when we compare you to other counties that are rated in the same range as you all or higher than you all are comparing very favorably or favorably on your fund balance and liquidity measures. Any way we look at it, total fund balance, available fund balance, or like we just walked through, that unassigned component. The bottom charts, all of those gold bars are further to the right than the green bars, which is where you want to be. Okay? That was part of the tedious part that Z had mentioned. But are there any questions there? I don't want to take it for granted. I mean, that's really the takeaway is I think you've managed fund balance well, and you compare very favorably. You are right where you need to be for the rating you have, and you compare well to some of those rating categories above you. So that would be viewed or continue to be viewed as a positive credit factor.
Ted, in your opinion, the last time we did was 13. How often should a county like us update that bond rating? I realize it's done partially each year, but to go the whole thing.
Yeah, so like you said, the partially part, they are pulling your audit and they're putting it into their models.
But that doesn't seem to change much.
That doesn't usually, somebody at the data entry level is doing it, and if it pops out as being really out of whack, it might rise to the next level.
One way or the other, right.
Right, and the general rule of thumb with the rating agencies is they don't really have an upside to moving your rating up. Mm-hmm. They want to protect investors from saying we think Nash is a AA and they just missed the mark because you've fallen apart. That's what they're really concerned about, not messing up on. But moving your rating higher proactively, there's not a real incentive for them to do that. So you definitely have to do it when you issue bonds. I think it's a case by case basis. It's been 5 years now. Some good things have happened. With this type of information, you can begin to say, look, do we have a case to have a conversation with these folks and request a more thorough review? And I would say, yeah, and they're always willing to do that for you, but you have to ask for it.
What would that cost be to the county?
I'll have to double check myself on this, but I believe since you have a rating, it may not be a cost at all to doing that. Okay. But I'd need to double check that. Okay. Each of them may look at that a little differently. You'll notice that in there was a Moody's report from 17. Right. They have evolved proactively on their own to say, look, if you, the county, are not in the market every year, we're going to look at you and put this, it's a watered down version of their normal report. Again, it's kind of boilerplate, but it's an effort by them, Moody's, to make sure that people that own your bonds have something to look at that's more current than a 2013 report. You know, if you're looking to buy Nash County bonds, you know, you'd like to have something to read about the credit that's more recent than 5 years. And so Moody's has moved to that methodology. S&P hasn't gotten there yet. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so we thought we transition on page 16 to debt. And we're starting with just the existing debt, and this is through and including everything that's been done within the last year or two. What you're gonna see, a few different places, but let's round it up. You've got $58 million of debt outstanding as of the end of the last fiscal year, which is the audit we're working from, okay? That's principal outstanding. You can see graphically how your debt profile looks. Everything on the books today is paid off by fiscal year 43. Everything is fixed rate. It's not going to change unless you change it. And you've got a general decline to your debt profile. On the right-hand side, you can see by fiscal year principal, interest, and total. So in the year we're in, FY18, your tax-supported debt payment is about $5.9 million, and it's stepping down over time, which is pretty typical for North Carolina. The LGC in particular likes to emphasize having that nice decline in your debt that helps you afford the next project or the next piece of debt, whatever it might be. There's on the far right, there's a column called 10-year payout ratio. What we're measuring there is of that $58 million of principal, how much of that is paid back in the next 10 years. So it's a forward-looking measure of how quickly you're amortizing or repaying your debt. And what you'll see in the schedule is you're amortizing over $3.5 to $4 million a year of principal. So in the next 10 years, without any new debt, you will retire 66 to 70% of that outstanding debt. Higher is better. It means you're repaying it more quickly and more rapidly. Okay? That's one of those key debt ratios that we're going to look at here in a moment. As we transition in a few pages to potential new projects, this step down in your existing debt is going to be a key component to your affordability or ability to take on and pay for new debt. And we'll talk about that. All right, page 17, this is that 10-year payout ratio. So we graphed it a little bit differently on the left. The green bars are percentages. Remember, you were at 66% and it was getting better. We are not assuming any new debt in the next couple pages, just the existing debt you have. And on the upper right, we're doing another comparison, same setup as before on your 10-year payout. Remember on this one, the percentage is being higher is better. So you compare, you're below the median for these different categories, but when you look at the data for the North Carolina counties, you'll see at 66%, you're nowhere near the minimum value for some of these other highly rated communities. Remember, with the bond ratings, not any one of these ratios is going to drive the rating. So they may appear to be weak on certain measures here, but they would have offsetting strengths elsewhere. Debt is 10 to 20% of the rating, and this is a debt ratio. So you might be weak here, and that's going to hurt you for that 10 or 20% of the rating process, but you might have some strengths elsewhere. Okay? Page 18, debt to assessed value. So what we're measuring here is that $58 million of principal as a percent of your tax base. We're using $7.2 billion as the tax base. We're assuming a 1% growth rate in your tax base just from general, new development activity. You all do have a policy that says that ratio should not exceed 2%. You're well below that. You're under 1%. You're at 0.8% and declining over time. And those green bars on the left are declining because you're paying down your debt every year, but we're also assuming a modest growth rate in your tax base. So within this policy, you would look at that and say, well, we've got some capacity to take on additional debt and still be in compliance or, be able to demonstrate we've got a good debt profile. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's affordable. right? How do you pay for it is an entirely different question, related but different question. So the capacity is there, and then we're going to move in a few pages to affordability. On the comparative in the upper right, you can see here, remember, lower is better in this case. You're at 0.8%. You know, your North Carolina AAAs, the median is, got cut off, I don't know, what is that, Chaz, about 1.25%?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and you can see the minimum and the maximum. Remember, there's 9 counties in that group. The AA1s, the maximum is 2.5%. The AA2s, which is the category you're in, the maximum is 2.9%. So some pretty high values there, even within the North Carolina peers.
Ted, on each one of these charts, I'm surprised that the national is so much better each time than North Carolina.
Well,
Why
and
is that so? I would have
and-
thought North Carolina was what you always hear is in excellent financial shape.
Right, and this chart in particular, it's a little bit of a function of the data isn't really perfect. In a lot of states, counties aren't responsible for school. So you have counties in South Carolina and Pennsylvania and elsewhere that don't issue school debt. You have independent school districts
Right.
with taxing authority and debt issuance authority. So it just gets lost a little bit.
I knew something
That's right.
had control that way,
Right.
that thing keeps showing up like it is.
I mean, we could dig down deeper, because if you live in Richland County, South Carolina, which is the Columbia area,
Right.
you're paying a county tax, but then you're also paying the Richland County School District tax. So we could figure that out. It just really, I think if you were to do that,
It
you're
would
gonna
change.
find what you're talking about is
Right.
that North Carolina really is
Better shape
better shape.
than the average. Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
The last debt ratio is debt service to expenditures on page 19. This is where we're measuring how much of your annual budget is going towards debt service. So if you remember, your current debt service payment was around $5.8 million a year and declining. So when we go through the methodology like the rating agencies do, we come up with your debt service as a percent of budget is a little over 6%, and it's declining over time as you're paying down your debt. We've also assumed a 1% growth rate here. You have a policy that says that won't go above 12%. So again, in this ratio, in this policy, you've got capacity. And on a comparative basis in the upper right, remember here, lower is better. The gold bar is below all of those medians. And, you know, again, interestingly, with the North Carolina counties in dark green, you know, it's kind of interesting to see some of the higher rated counties oftentimes are on the higher end of the debt ratios, which is just generally a function of those higher rated counties are faster growing, more growth, more demand, particularly for counties for schools, and more debt. So they tend to be on the higher end of the debt ratios, but they also probably have very strong economies, which are an offsetting factor to the higher debt ratios. So the takeaway on all of this debt is you've managed that well, you're in compliance with all your policies. I think it's safe to say that the county has debt capacity. It's a reasonable conversation, if you want to have it, to be talking about projects that might require debt. And even if you took on more debt, your policy, you know, within reason, the policies would be fine, and your comparatives would be fine. Again, it's within reason, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's affordable, right? How are you going to pay for it? That's the next page. And this is another small type, page 20. But what we're trying to illustrate for you all here is every year, how are you paying for your debt service? And if you look on the far left, it's by fiscal year, beginning in fiscal 18. And that first column, which is column B, that is your existing debt service schedule, which we've already seen. We know that to the penny every year going forward. We've got some placeholders there, columns C, D, E, and F, for potential new projects, which we are not addressing here on this page. But you will notice under column D, which is pay-go funding. That's essentially cash funding for annual capital. Maybe it's rolling stock, vehicles, some other smaller projects or not so small projects that might come up, like a HVAC replacement or a boiler replacement, things of that nature. Generally speaking, on an annual basis in recent years, that's been the order of magnitude of dollars that you all have made available for those sorts of pay-as-you-go, non-debt funded capital. Okay? The middle of the page is where the dollars are coming from to repay that debt and the pay-go. So column H, 2.5 million, that is a general fund appropriation from current year revenues. For the time being, we've held that flat all the way out. Okay? Under column I is restricted sales tax dollars that are available particularly for school capital and school debt service, 2.4 million. We've also held that flat. Lottery funds, you get more than 936,000, but some of that goes to other purposes. We've got about 930,000 per year plugged in here for debt. And then the last is column L, ongoing revenues available for capital. That's really the pay-go. You've got programmed into your budget that $1.5 million, and we've assumed that you can continue to do that on an annual basis. Now, I believe in years past, you've appropriated fund balance as part of the budget to make that available, but you've never had to use the appropriation. If you go back to that fund balance page, you've actually added fund balance. So you've appropriated, it might be spent on capital, but at the end of the year, you're not only not using the appropriation, but you're actually putting some additional dollars to the reserve. So when we look at columns H through L, all of these we've assumed can continue going forward at their current level. We haven't built in any growth, we haven't built in any declines. And so column M, as in Michael, is 7.3 million of annual revenues, all things being equal, that you could make available every year going forward. Remember, this has nothing to do with your operating budget. You've got things going on in your operating budget, salaries, other costs, other, school costs that might be helping you or hurting you. This is just the capital, 7.3 million. And so if you remember, your existing debt is paying down every year. But if you can continue to budget like you have been and make a constant amount of dollars available, what you're going to see is you start to have some available reserves to help pay for whatever the next project might be. And that's column N, as in Nancy. If you can continue to budget like you have been for revenues, knowing what your debt service is doing as we move forward, column N has some dollars that are available to pay for that pay-as-you-go funding and or potential new debt. Okay?
If I can explain the 1.5 million, that's based on this year's capital, which y'all agreed at this meeting last year to put into capital funding, just like you're looking at capital funding this year. We plugged that number in, that total capital number in to that fund balance appropriated for capital spending. So that can fluctuate, just like the sales tax probably will go up a little bit. It has been. So. But for this purpose,
yeah, and we haven't built in any growth. And again, we're not tackling the operating budget here either, where growth in sales tax and other growth factors, may well be needed.
Ted, also before you leave that page on column M,
right?
If the board were to take a position that we wanted to level that debt off and put that number in the budget moving forward, what would that do to our bond rating, in your opinion?
It creates a great deal of certainty for the rating agencies that your debt is going to be repaid. That, at the end of the day, that's what they're rating. What's the likelihood that Nash County is going to make their payments or not make their payments? So if there were to be a more formalized approach, you've been doing that, but you're you know, you're doing it year by year with the budget. If you were to consider doing a more formalized policy or approach, I think that would be helpful because it does provide one additional sort of level of certainty that that will be done, or at least it makes it more difficult not to do it because you have to undo a policy or a procedure, if that makes sense.
So the fact that you have made a decision as a board that you're gonna do some projects that requires that amount of revenue for the next umpteen number of years does not negatively affect the bond rating, but could possibly positively affect it.
It could, yeah. If you sort of put more definition and teeth to a capital funding plan. Now, it doesn't mean you have to issue the debt, right?
Understand.
But I think you're talking about memorializing at some level the funding for capital.
Yes, sir.
And if you don't need it or you don't use it, that's fine. But if you do, that would be viewed, I think, as a strength from the rating agencies, that it's not something that's necessarily sort of year by year, willy-nilly. I mean, you do have to obviously go through the budget process and, you know, make sure everything's lining up. But I believe that would be viewed favorably because it is an element of longer-term planning, which they like.
I'm surprised at your answer, but I like your answer. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't think they correlate that with they're gonna do more debt, and that's a bad thing. They're just saying, look, these folks have identified that there's a constant level of funding that they're willing to commit to if they need to fund those projects.
If you run into a situation where even though you've outlined what you're gonna pay on the debt, and you get to a point that you may have to change it, that will probably affect your bond rating, wouldn't it? And would you have to refinance in a situation like that?
No, I think, and we've had these conversations with people that have policies or procedures, and sometimes they are in positions where they need to think about doing a project that might require them to go above their debt policy, for example, or change the funding plan. And I think by and large, the rating agencies get comfort that if you know that's coming and you're able to discuss it and plan for it, that gives them a whole lot of comfort that you might say, look, we realize if we take on this project, we might be out of compliance with our policy for a couple of years, but we're doing that knowingly, and we have an expectation to get back into compliance within a few years. They get comfort in that because you all are engaged in the process and it's forward-looking, as opposed to just sort of saying, we want to do this project and aren't really looking at what the implications are. So the best case is to be able to maintain compliance with all of your procedures and policies, but if you're unable or you need to make a decision about something that would put you out of compliance, that's not necessarily a bad thing, particularly if you as an elected body knows it and is discussing it and is dealing with it with a forward look. Okay? All right.
And let me say, in column N, except for the first year, it doesn't include the 1.5 million.
Yeah, those dollars in column N, you know, if you keep the level of $1.5 million per year of funding, those will
Reduce
come out of
1.5.
that. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I struggled. I mean, that would be you know, we would take column D and make it $1.5 million a year.
It can fluctuate.
It can go either way. So the last part of this book is picking up on 22.
Let me ask you a
Yes.
couple more questions before you leave that section. On page 16, that interest ratio to principal is just extremely low. What does that thing look like in those years when we were having 12-14% interest rate? I mean, I'm talking about the light green versus
Yeah, the light green.
upper right hand.
Yeah, cause
Left-hand
probably
column.
your average interest rate is, 3%, maybe it's 2.7%, I don't know what it is. So the light green is a very thin component of the overall.
But certainly in your career, you've seen that almost half and half, haven't you?
That's right, yes.
Or worse than that.
And it also, like if you were to look at a USDA debt obligation, 30 or 40 years, and it's mortgage style, right? So you might have a level payment every year, but your principal component is
Right.
very low
Yeah.
and it's growing. In that case, that light green is a much more significant component.
Gotcha.
But the way you all have structured your debt in the past, you have that declining structure so that that further minimizes the light green color. It's a function of low interest rates and the fact that you do level principal, so the interest is a low component to start with.
Yeah, we don't do level payments, we do level principal.
That's right.
And one last question, if this board has some needs that we're gonna be looking at very soon, potentially a approximately $4 million expenditure on a couple of items that we're looking at, one-time expenditures, infrastructural radios. And what you've analyzed here, or in your opinion, do we need to borrow that money or do we need to spend it out of fund balance?
Well, you've got the fund balance to do it, right? Remember?
Well, we fully understand that, yeah.
And I think you could, for the rating agencies, in a perfect world, you'd never spend fund balance. But if you are gonna spend it, they'd much rather see you spend it for capital. And so,
Understand that.
those gold bars on that fund balance page would come down a little bit, more in line with the medians. And I think if there's a discussion around that look, we felt like we had built up reserves and we didn't need that many reserves, and this was a way to pay for a project without debt, that would resonate with them. Now, remember, finance and reserves is 20 to 30% of the rating, and you're strong on reserves. And at least a few years ago, you were weak on economy. So if your reserves are adequate, or they're strong but not very strong, right? If you spend some reserves, it's a dynamic of right now those strong reserves might be offsetting a weakness elsewhere. Your debt profile is good, your reserve profile is good. A few years ago, your economy was less good, so the strong debt and the strong reserves were helping to offset that. If you bring yourself to sort of a normal reserve level, how does that change? And we can dig into that and replicate the models, but I think they would. I certainly don't see an issue with S&P. Now, how does that potentially hinder your ability to make that one-step move? That's a conversation that you'd have to have. We would have to have with S&P and explain why we believe spending that cash still leaves us with ample liquidity to do what we need to do. Avoiding, you have the debt capacity.
Sure.
All of your debt ratios are strong, so.
It was a one-word answer.
Yes or no?
No, it's not.
No.
It's complicated, but you can take on debt without
Yeah.
putting your debt profile in a weakened position.
And
What should you,
Go ahead.
shouldn't you weigh using fund balance versus borrowing money and going in debt? Which would be more feasible, or where the consequences would be if you use your fund balance versus borrowing the money?
Well, let me just say this. We talked a
Ted,
lot
let me add
about.
one more thing in there.
Okay.
We sometimes get some pressure about the amount of fund balance we have
Right.
from other agencies that we fund.
Right.
Taking that in consideration, go ahead and
Gotcha.
ask Ms. Bellfield's question.
We talked a lot about the rating agencies. I don't, they're important and you want to have a good bond rating, but I'm not a proponent you should manage yourself exclusively for them. You've got to do what's right for Nash County. You know, you're looking at these projects, you certainly could borrow the money at attractive rates, your debt profile would still be strong. We're in a rising rate environment. You're starting to see better return on your reserves and on your cash that's going to approach your borrowing rate at some point. So you could look at it purely from a financial perspective and say, look, if we can borrow it 3.5% and we're investing at 1.5% today, with the likelihood that that investment rate's going to go higher, it may make sense to borrow and keep your cash, earn interest.
Does it matter that the debt issuance would be for 5 to 7 years versus 10 to 20?
Well, that even brings those two numbers closer. Maybe over 5 or 7 or 10 years, or 5 or 7 years, you're borrowing at sub 3% rates, and your investment on reserves are going at, I don't know, the capital management trust is at 1.5 now, and it's expected to go higher. So I think there's pure finance you might want to look at, your borrowing rate versus your reinvestment rate. I don't think there's a right answer for these projects in your situation. I think it's, you know, it's part of the bigger picture of your budget. What additional needs might you have for those reserves that might not be financeable? I mean, you may have something that comes along that you need to spend money on that you can't finance, right?
And in this case, that's probably what we're talking about, potentially, being, helping get internet in the rest of the county that's underserved or no service.
Right, so if you're committed to that project and these other projects, the radio system is easy to finance.
Sure.
You got good collateral.
Right.
That other one, not so much, and so that might be the one that's better funded with cash, because it really can't be financed easily.
Okay, I think you give us the answer. We kind of wanted to hear that.
That's another tedious part there, sorry. All right, so page 22 is, I alluded to it at the beginning, is a list of capital projects, preliminary. I don't know, Z, how else you might describe it. It's not a firm funding plan, but it's intended to try to show you, I guess, what is out there being discussed, the relative dollar amounts and the timing over this period of time, which is fiscal 19, apologize, the header says 18, it's 19 through 22. And then we've got a column called future years, which obviously is just beyond 2022. Something on the range of about $42 million worth of projects. Those projects are listed on lines 1 through 12. So you can see any project, the year, and the amount. Okay? And then down below are the sources of funding that have been identified at this point. We've tried to color code these so you can see, you know, what project up top is lined up with the funding source down below. And not every project is fully funded here. And of particular note, line 6, which is the health facility expansion, which is a future year project at $6.8 million. We have started with looking at that as debt funded, as we did for the new elementary school on line 9, $19 million and 21. Both of those are debt funded in our model. The rest are funded through annual contribution for capital, reserves, and/or outside funding in the form of grants or other revenues.
And for your information, y'all probably know this, the 625 in the blue, that's the project that they asked for this year, which we can easily move that over if y'all approve that.
What is the,
CAD.
right, I understand that, but on line item 6, what is that?
Health Department building.
That's just something that's been in there a long time,
That's what, I
apparently.
think that's what it was.
Yeah. And I know we may have alternatives, hopefully.
Okay, I just wondered what it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we're just with staff taking this at face value for what it is. And as a starting point, we're gonna demonstrate to you all on the next page what is the impact on your debt budget or your capital budget if you were to fund all of these projects the way we've shown and the amounts and the timing. Again, I think you all will continue to go through a process and look at prioritization and other things. So what we've shown you on 23 was kind of what I just said, is look, we're gonna fund this and fund it from either that $1.5 million of pay-as-you-go or other county reserves, but we are going to include debt funding for the elementary school and the health facility. We're doing 20-year debt, level principal at 5%. That's well above the current market. If you all were in the market today, you'd be 3.25% maybe for 20-year debt. So understanding that these projects, if they happen, are out a few fiscal years, we bump that rate. You can see on 24, if you were to debt fund those two projects, what your new debt profile would look like. The dark green on 24 is that existing debt you have on the books today, and then the light blue and light brown is that potential new projects for the school and the health. Again, just isolated those for debt because the size or the amount aren't likely feasible to be funded with cash.
It only gets ugly in the middle, don't it?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, that upper left graph, the dark green is, remember, that's your 5.8 million a year that you're paying right now. So you can see with just very straightforward debt, you get close to that 7 million level, and then it begins to step down again. We've gone back on 25, if this were the approach. On page 25, we've shown you those three debt ratios with that potential new debt or hypothetical new debt. So your 10-year payout ratio really doesn't change a whole lot, and neither do the other. Debt to assessed value in the upper right, it's the light green is the new debt coming on out a few years. So it actually probably isn't too far off where you are right now, because it goes down for a couple of years and then it steps back up. Debt service to expenditures down below. So again, this is what, $25 million of debt that would be issued somewhere between fiscal 21 and 23 if this were the plan. And clearly your debt ratios, while they do go up, you're really, it's not a major change to those debt ratios. That gets to that concept of, yes, there's capacity there. And then
And the 2% and the 12% on page 25, our policies, are they in line, or should they be raised or lowered?
no, they're good policies. I mean, as policies go, and particularly debt service to expenditure, it's not uncommon to see people that have policies that might be 15%. And you saw from the comparatives, you have people that are above 15 and getting closer to 20%. So, yes, I think these are good policies. They're not artificially inflated just to make it look like you've got capacity. They're very reasonable policies.
Okay.
And so the last thing on page 26, you've seen this. There's a couple columns that have changed. We've laid in under column C the potential new debt for the projects I just spoke to. Under column D, we've held that $1.5 million a year constant of pay-go. That's now, more than just 1 year. And then under column E, we've got other funding, which is the other projects on that list that aren't debt funded, right? We said, let's just not assume debt for the time being, cash fund it, so you can see it's fairly front loaded, 19, 20, and 21. Essentially, this page funds that entire CIP page year by year. Okay? And what you're going to see as you go across, we've included some one-time revenues available for capital under K. And as you go across further, you're now going to see that column N as in Nancy goes negative. Okay? and it goes negative for, I don't know, probably 7, 8 years. So what our model measures is, okay, well, how are we gonna plug that gap? I should have mentioned on the other page, if you see column S, the far right, there's $2.2 million there. That is monies that you all have set aside in prior years for capital. It is separate and distinct from your fund balance unassigned that we talked about. It's real money over here. And so I didn't mention that on the prior page, but what you see we're doing here is we're actually going to use that in this model. We use it to try to plug the gap in that first year of 19 so it goes away. And then our model under column R solves for what's the equivalent number of pennies on the tax rate that you would need to supplement your debt budget. So it's about 2.6 pennies, with each penny generating about $720,000. So said another way, if you said, look, I want to fund, or we want to fund that CIP just the way it's been presented, we're going to cash fund everything except for those 2 projects, the school and the health facility, and we're going to fund them in the years that they're shown. What do we need to do to supplement our budget, our debt service budget? You would end up, in this case, spending that $2.2 million you set aside, and you'd need the equivalent revenues of about 2.5 pennies.
In this scenario, what do you do with total assessed value when projected that? Do you hold it level as well?
1% growth in assessed value.
1%?
Yes, sir. So the penny down here, we're assuming that the penny is worth $720,000 now, and the value will grow at 1% a year.
In that 2.2 in column S, I'm assuming is the senior center and the early college money?
No, column S is not for anything currently.
Yeah.
Not
It's
for anything
just-
specific.
Economic development fund, thing like that?
Yeah, this is just money that's set aside it hasn't been, assigned.
Designated?
It hasn't been designated other than
This one,
capital.
Where we were trying to show fund balance would be less.
Okay. Thank you.
With Ted, on that scenario, let's take for instance the revow we just completed over a 10-year. We had a decline, whereas this would have shown us having a 10% increase. We really would have had about a 12% bust over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and so,
Tell us what you think. I mean, how do we guard against that?
well, so I guess what I would ask is, was there any year-over-year growth in between the revals? Natural growth, non-reval related growth, new construction.
Last couple of years.
The last couple of years, yes.
Right, but maybe not for certain prior years.
Well, it had not to be for us to end up a negative.
When
2%
we
or so.
met
And
them,
it assumes you go revenue neutral in a reval. We need the dollars in this model.
So it does make that assumption.
Yes.
you mean in the 8th year from
Any
now?
reval you
Any
do
reval.
going forward,
Okay.
it assumes revenue neutral, but it does assume 1% growth.
Yeah,
Revenue neutral plus 1% growth.
That's right.
he had 0% growth, and this current year, based on the budget stuff we've gotten from her and from Donna and Jim, it's actually higher than 1%
Yeah.
tax base growth. So,
But
We
1%,
decided-
well, I'll just say, at one point in our life, we would have thought that was conservative, but in the rearview mirror we look in now, that may not have been conservative.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, the model has the ability to say, look, let's assume growth for the first 5 years and then no, I mean,
Well, I know you got to treat it somehow,
Yeah.
and 1% sounds conservative.
Yeah.
but the other key, I think, which was getting to part of your question, is it does assume, on top of the 1% growth, that all other things being equal, you go revenue neutral, not back or
Which
not forward
This
anymore.
board has never done, either way.
Pardon?
This board has never done that in either direction.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
So this is meant to be really just something, I guess, to start the discussion or help continue the discussion on your capital
Well, it's
needs.
great information.
Not, again, not that those are the projects that anybody is moving forward with.
Well, it's certainly what's on our CIP.
The appendix, I think, is a good reference for y'all to keep. It gives you the breakdown on every single indebtedness you have. The community college, and then the Middlesex, Eastern Region loan, Raymond James loan we did for the courthouse.
Yeah, you see each piece. And this is just your tax-supported debt. So, and I'm trying to draw a blank of it, the utility debt out there,
The
right?
USDA.
Oh,
Yeah,
USDA.
none of that's in here. None of that's been in any of this
Yeah.
discussion.
Now, there was a policy that we hadn't adopted for one index.
That's the 10-year payout ratio. Remember that measure of how much you pay back in a 10-year period. If you look at, probably just,
Page 17? Or page?
yeah,
Yeah.
17. One additional debt policy you could consider is establishing a minimum 10-year payout ratio. That's on page 17. Remember, that's, a higher percentage is better there. That means you're paying debt back more quickly. If you establish a minimum, and I think we said 55 to 60%, let's say, what that does, the easiest way to make debt service payments go down or make something more affordable is to stretch it out or backload it. And obviously the LGC and yourselves haven't practiced that, but it could. And so a minimum level of 10-year payout ratio just keeps you from doing something like that. It establishes a minimum policy. So it would be a policy
What would
below
be
which.
your recommendation on that, and what are we at?
Well, you're at 66%.
Okay?
And we've recommended at a minimum of, let's say, 55%. And you know, for y'all in particular, like that Middlesex School project,
Yeah.
which was a USDA project, that's one that has a very slow principal payback because it's long and it's level. So if it would be interesting to look at what your 10-year payout ratio would be if you extracted that, it would be higher. But I think 55%, now I will tell you, if you look at 17 and on the right-hand side, Moody's really doesn't address that 10-year payout ratio in their methodology unless it's really high or really low. S&P though does give you extra credit if you're able to demonstrate that you're at 65% or better.
Is it norm for a county to have that policy on tenure?
That's a pretty typical, if there are debt policies, yes. But it's a
I just
minimum
don't know
level.
that would always work in your favor.
Pardon?
I can't quite see that would always be advantageous for our board. I know we don't take in utility funding, but we've got some other projects that we're gonna have 30-year paybacks on. And sometimes if that interest rate's low enough, why not let it, and it's fixed, why not let it run for
Well,
30 years?
and
And you
I-
could restrict yourself with a policy in that
I
regard.
agree totally. And so what I would say is if there's consideration of that, the important thing in setting any policy or this new policy would be, what are we planning to do in the future and, you know, how would it impact it? Now, what I would tell you with the CIP we have on page 25, your 10, remember 25 is where we add those two new pieces of debt. I mean, you don't, your 10-year payout ratio doesn't fall below where it is. And that, you know, we assume 20-year debt. But if you are thinking about some project that might have a longer-term debt, we'd want to know how that would impact this. Remember, this policy is not about any one piece of debt. It's about the aggregate.
Yeah, but you never know what funding mechanism will be available moving forward. I mean, federal government may always have stuff available that could be used on some of these projects rather than in the utility funds.
Yep, I mean, that, and, you know, I mean,
Hot money.
I agree, and you can always make an exception, you know, you can say, look, we got a funding
Right.
mechanism that we believe we need to
Is
pursue.
that
and-
uncommon to do that? I mean, is that looked upon negatively to do that?
No,
Make that exception?
no, it's because what it demonstrates is you all are engaged in making decisions as
I
opposed to
wouldn't
them.
I wouldn't mind having one then if you've got that ability to do an exception.
And that should probably be, and we have your policies. That might be good language to just put as a general rule, that look, if there is a reason to request an exception to the policy, we bring it to the board, we discuss it, and they acknowledge it, and that is a common,
Do most counties have, it seems like I've seen 50% a lot of times. Is that,
that's, I mean.
that's the norm? I mean, is
Well,
that,
no, I think the rating agencies, and I go back to them
the
because.
higher you do, the better.
Well, yes, but I also, I would add to that they care less about the percentage than about the process. They care about the process, that you have established board-adopted policies. Now, if you're gonna say we got a 25% payout ratio, they're gonna discount that as being
Sure.
irrelevant.
Right.
But at 50 or 55, they're not gonna make a judgment. They're gonna say, look, they have a policy, it's board adopted, and therefore they have a process that they're gonna discuss this. And that's really what they want, not 50 versus 55.
The other thing, you mentioned the Middlesex long-term debt, $6 million, 6.7 million over another 25 years. Would it make sense to, at this point, I know we looked at it before, refinance it, or rather than pay as you go for these other two projects that we've talked about, pay this off with that excess fund balance and at least the $3.5 million radio project, finance that for 5 to 7 years? Wouldn't that?
What is the rate on Middlesex?
3.5. It's probably our highest of any
But it's also a
USDA.
25-year debt.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not gonna get
Yeah.
3.5%
Yeah.
today for 25 years.
right.
So I think it's a function of, all right, well, you know, if we paid this off, our debt payments would drop by $400,000 a year. It's gone, right?
The other thing I'd have concern there is and it's probably nothing to it, but, you know, we depended on USDA so much in the past, and we didn't use them at Northern Nash Water District, but we got something better. I'd almost be somewhat reluctant to go pay off an existing loan. Would they look upon that as unfavorably, that we just use them when we need them mentality?
They
don't
they
think
like
so.
you to pay it off.
Yeah.
We've had
Yeah.
those conversations,
Okay.
and they've been
That's the
very
same
positive
question I was
that
gonna ask.
it
that you asked.
cycles more money
Okay.
through,
All right.
and I think there's something in all of those USDA documents that essentially says you're getting this USDA loan because conventional financing isn't feasible. And if you get to the place where conventional financing is feasible, you should probably pay this back.
Well, that's in there, you answered my question.
And one thing we could do is
From there.
refinance it at 15 or 20 years at a lower rate and keep the payments about the same as they are right now.
Yeah, I mean.
And we looked at that when we did the refinancing,
Right, I knew you looked at that. when
but
you
there
did
wasn't
75.
that much of a savings at the time. But we
And
said
there's-
we'd relook at it.
Well,
Probably
we
wouldn't
relook at it,
change.
it's gonna get tougher and
It's
tougher
gonna get tougher and
because,
tougher with the interest rate.
Yeah.
that's right.
I don't think you're gonna.
It-
I mean, we can definitely shorten it and save interest,
Right,
even at a higher interest rate. I'm
Right.
not suggesting you would do it,
yeah,
but shorten it up, but your payments,
gotcha.
I think that's one loan we always need to keep in the background
Understood.
about
Mhm.
keeping an eye on it, yeah.
I mean, you'd be better off, I'm gonna say better off, it would be interesting if you wanna think about using cash to pay off debt. Obviously, there's a part of that we need to know is really what is your borrowing cost if you needed to do the radio system, right? I mean, what's your borrowing rate?
Right.
And if you say, look, it's better to borrow that and use cash to pay off some of these other debts, I mean, 185, 140, I mean, you've got some pretty low interest rate.
I would think with the interest rates that we got on everything we got, it's gonna be hard to justify taking cash and paying those loans off.
Right,
Mhm.
but taking cash and avoiding debt may be a different tactic.
Yeah.
We were discussing earlier, you may want to hold on to your cash and try to take advantage of a shorter term, lower interest rate loan.
What are the Series 2010 bonds, limited obligation bonds?
Those were the bonds for the, it's a high school.
The high school?
2010 was a high school, right?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Those were the portion of those bonds that
That
could
we-
not be refunded.
That we didn't refinance. Some of that we could.
They were the first 10 years of that loan. So they'll be gone in a couple of years.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions from members?
Excellent information.
Definitely a great presentation. We appreciate it. Appreciate all you've done for us through the years.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
I guess we can take a break now for about 5 minutes. We are ahead of schedule by 10 minutes.
That's good.
First thing on the agenda for commissioner discussion is the capital and expansion request.
Is there any way we can cancel this part of it?
Again, the current year, we budgeted 1.4 million from fund balance to pay for capital requests that were
What sheet should we be looking at now, Mr.
the attachment B that had C on it. No.
That, you must have had an older one.
Okay. Is this an older one?
Yes, that was my first version.
So what we
got
need?
attachment C.
But it hasn't changed, just that should be.
Okay.
That's B.
Attachment B,
Yes,
Well, B is paperwork from yesterday.
yeah.
yes.
Okay. This morning when you got here, you had a new C at your desk, so I just wanna get us, find out what you're talking about.
Thank y'all for doing it.
Yeah, so again, we budgeted last year and the current year, about 1.4, 1.5 million from fund balance for capital projects. You know, that's, whatever you do capital comes from fund balance, for the most part, so, one-time capitals are fund balance, so.
Ms. Lamb, can I ask something before we get started on this? Do we have a projection of revenue that we're gonna see prior to trying to start picking and choosing these things? I mean, I would work better if I had an understanding of what the revenue picture looked like before we start doing that. Could we potentially go through that side first?
I don't have the breakdown of it, I just have the lump sum of our current estimated.
Do we have something on it?
Yes.
Do y'all see what I'm saying? I got to know where the money is before I start.
Well,
Spending that's not there,
Yeah.
Okay, so on the very first sheet, the summary sheet that sort of summarizes
That we
all the
got
projects
yesterday?
that you have, that you had yesterday.
Well, hold on just a
It
minute.
doesn't have anything at the top of it, it just has the base budget, general fund expenditures at the very top.
Okay.
Let me see which one.
It looks
It's
like
a long
this.
sheet for you.
And so what I did, I plugged in,
Hold on 1 minute, let them all find it.
okay,
That's not in there.
No, that's not it.
and we have not massaged the revenues yet. We've used the same, at the moment, pretty much the same, for the major ones, same criteria we have used in the past. For example, ad valorem taxes, collection rate, we're at 97.5. That's where we've been the last couple of years. We are actually collecting 98.45, almost 1% higher, and you get about 420,000 per percent. So that gives us a little flexibility to go to 47.75 or 48, and still be under, what we're gonna do. But right now, we've got it at 47.5, like we had last year. Sales tax, we're, estimating for next year, what we're gonna get this year. A lot of counties will take the growth that is anticipated for next year based on projections and add that in. We're not doing that. We're not using last year's actuals, but we're using based on the first 7 or 8 months, what we believe this year's actuals will be.
Does this sheet include B and C?
It does.
Okay, so what we're looking at with B and C totally funded is about a $6 million appropriation.
That's
That's
correct.
the starting point.
Right. Without any fund balance appropriated.
Well,
No, that's the fund balance that would have to be
yeah,
appropriated.
it's
Right.
showing
Is the question.
about a
Yeah,
$6
this would
million
have to- Right,
appropriation
that's what would have to be
But-
to
appropriated.
cover B and C as it is presented.
That is,
That is if you did not appropriate any fund balance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you,
Well, that's what it takes total fund balance to balance the budget.
right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right
with a
now.
conservative
That's
estimate
right.
of
Right.
revenue.
You're right.
For instance, the paper today's paper made a statement that we had about a $4 million bust, but it's really a $5.7 million bust.
That's right.
And that's,
That's because last year, you appropriated 1.8 million for current expense. That we didn't have. I guess that's why. Yeah, I don't know. I think what he did, he took the,
he took this number right here, Z.
He being the reporter.
That's what I'm
Oh,
guessing.
yeah.
Because I plugged in the number of the cost of the expansion items that I had listed.
Cost of expansion items.
4.2.
What I have, so that would be the additional that I added in for Nash Community College.
Right.
Yeah,
All the
that's what
expansion
he
items
said right there.
requested.
But one way I had to think about it, I think the rest of the board probably looks at the same way, is our baseline is what we did this year. How much projected additional revenue have we got that we can add to this year's budget?
She has used the same methodology we've used in the past with projections.
That 88 million, is that what you use,
That's
projected
right.
revenues, 88 million?
Right, that's the projected revenue. No, that's a conservative estimate on revenue. So that, like Z was saying, there is some room to go back. That's just very conservative if I didn't make any changes and just, because revenue is really very difficult to estimate. But we have some room in ad valorem tax, sales tax that we can go back and take a look at.
Well, you bound to have some growth in total assessed value.
We do.
Okay, is that
It's
shown
about
in,
s-
is
yeah.
that shown in the new revenue
Yes,
figure?
yes, 600, about 600,000
So that's 600,000.
in ad valorem based on about a 1.5%
Correct.
growth.
Gotcha, okay. And that's 600,000. Sales tax
I've got
projections,
these.
are we projecting higher sales tax or using the same number?
I'm projecting for
Here it
over.
is.
So, right, over, are you talking about the budget or the actual?
Didn't I get the right number just then? I don't know if everybody think I.
I'm
Okay,
talking about, I'm just looking for the total
yeah.
increased revenue for next year that we can get in our head before we start
Right.
picking and choosing this list.
Right. This year's budget was, in ad valorem taxes, including vehicles, was 47,938,000. Based on the growth, it's 48,593,000. So about 600. That includes, no growth in vehicles, but some growth in the,
So $600,000 is the number.
right.
And then sales tax.
Sales
Sales tax
tax
is
was, actual last year was 14.3 million. We budgeted this year 13.9 million. And based on projections for the end of this year, we plugged in 14,763,000,
So,
and it's 6%
800.
increase.
so using the same percent that you normally use, that's $800,000 additional revenue.
It's not percent for sales tax, we're basing it on the actual collections for this year based on 8 months or 7 months.
Got you, but what you
800.
project, you actually use some number in your revenue
Right, 800,000 over last year's
is
budgeted
what
amount.
is the budgeted amount, 800,000, okay.
Right.
What else can I put on that column? I
That's
only got-
increasing?
Yeah, I only got 1.4 million to pay for this 4.something million over.
We got a 25, we got a 25, and this is, again, projections, 25,000 more in excise stamps.
Well, do you have a bottom line somewhere?
I have the 88, I mean, I realize it's not balanced, but what we need, if we have recommendations from the commissioners how to move forward, or what you would like to try to include, then it gives us a base to sort of work with on balancing the budget.
You see, for
Yeah, but I'd rather,
next year, we haven't plugged in, we can't plug in your fund balance appropriated or your capital items. So that's $6 million right there that we haven't plugged in for next year. That's why it's 88,700,000 compared to, well,
okay.
last year it was 1.8 from fund balance for current expense, 1.4 million for capital items. We have not plugged those numbers in because we don't know what those numbers
Y'all's
are.
exercise is we're gonna go through here and either approve or not wish to move forward with this list of expenditures. And then y'all gonna go try to find the money to match it, is that what we're saying?
Then we will plug that in and make sure that
And see where
we can make it work.
see
I
if we
mean-
can make it work.
Yeah, let me see here.
I'll just quit talking and let y'all.
No,
go.
I understand what you're
I
saying.
think what you just said, right, we need to go through here and tell them what we approve or disapprove or change, and then let them come back with a figure.
Well, that's what we're gonna have to do.
We're
I
gonna
think
have
that
to.
what I would
That's the
prefer to
only way you
do is
can
I'd
do
like
it
to know
that
what
way.
money's available up
Right.
front.
Because they don't know
Cause it might change my mind.
They don't know what,
Well-
until yesterday afternoon, what everybody's asking for. So-
I can-
Well, Z, y'all studied this to death. You've got the, what is your bus number right this minute? $6 million,
Right.
5.7 million.
5.7.
So what that is what you're short right now, if we fund everything.
But,
It does that include the
But-
3%?
but it's
No.
really,
That doesn't include the 3%, which is a
it's just
million.
you're funding current expense and capital.
Right.
So capital being a one-time expenditure
Correct.
that would come out of
Fund
fund balance.
That's right.
So aren't you
You
really,
need to separate those two.
yeah, you need to
Yeah,
separate, you
that's
need to
right.
look at current expense, what we're looking at there totally
Yeah.
versus the revenue increase that we
Well-
say we
Well,
got.
let's do the capital first.
Again, on the fund balance appropriated, y'all always appropriate for capital, one line item in the expenditure from fund balance for capital. 2 of the last 4 years, we did 2.8 million from fund balance for current expense that we never used.
And we may have to do that this
In the
year.
last 2 years, we've done 1.8 in anticipation of revow. So we have room to go this
But on
year.
these capital items, they're one-time expense, we can clear them out of the way, and then we've got the current expense left to look at.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's why we'll have to go back. Are you going, each one of these capital items, are you gonna give us a recommendation?
I give recommendations when I'm asked to give a recommendation.
Board member number 7 would like to get a recommendation from each one of them, the administration, to start the discussion.
Well, the recommendations are already here.
Well,
You
it's
know,
not.
so,
These are
yes,
the-
yeah.
No,
They-
it's not
they-
recommendation.
Well, I'm sure they recommended, they projected it. They put them on, I mean,
No,
department
Mr. Fairfield,
heads,
that ain't what he's
the
doing.
department heads
Department
went
head
through.
recommended it.
Yeah, Right.
But I want to know what the manager recommends.
Well,
Y'all-
I think he would have told them,
Well,
Don't
rather
put-
than think, let's just move on
well,
and let him
don't
tell
put
us.
it in here if he didn't
Well, let me
see
say
his
this.
way through on it.
There were some capital items that
Asphalt stuff. that
were
I think
requested,
is-
smaller amounts, that the departments had the money in their budget this year.
Sure.
So when we went through the budget process, I told Donna that, since they have money in their budget this year, let's not take that to the board, let's just go ahead and take that out of this year's. Now, because it would require a, budget amendment, the cars for inspections, you know, we had that come to you because that's gonna require a budget amendment. But, I can do it either way. I mean, if,
What I think we need to do is go ahead and start with the administration building. Which one of those do you recommend, or any of them that you don't recommend? The 600,000.
Well, why don't we just go through them and as a board, just kind of talk about them as a board, see what the general thinking
Sure.
is, because I don't think necessarily that if I'm a manager in a department, I'm gonna tell the manager everything that I would like to have. I mean, and then we have to make a decision based on dollars available, what we can do.
Exactly.
For example, there's some things in here that I think, you know, we really don't need to spend on.
Well,
Well,
they ask for
there's no
things they
doubt
don't
that-
need.
Yes.
Wayne, that's why we need
Exactly.
him to tell us whether he supports this request from the department head or whether he doesn't.
Well, I think it kind of puts him in an awkward
Right.
Yeah, but I
situation
thought-
with his
Yeah,
manager,
in
department
in my,
heads.
in
But I mean,
my-
I'm okay either way,
Yeah.
what the board wants to do.
in my opinion, I thought he would have told them before we got this. in
Well,
the
he's
first
not gonna
place.
tell his department heads not to put something in there that they want.
Well, if it's not feasible,
They tell them they ain't gonna get it.
I would.
I mean, I try to negotiate,
Yeah.
with them during the budget process, but for the most part, this year, new positions and capital requests, there won't a whole lot of negotiating. I pretty much allowed them to, bring all of these.
So you see it as like this administrative building, this is repairs and stuff and maintenance that needs to be done?
Well,
Well,
that's
no.
what I don't think he's at.
That's what,
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's what the department head thinks needs to be done. Obviously, there's some low hanging fruit on the boiler replacement there.
well, if it's about to blow, it's about to blow, you know.
Well, did he say that?
Yeah.
I guess
He
it was
didn't
more
say that.
efficient to replace it.
Yeah, it'd be more efficient, the payback would be about 8 to 10 years, and if something happens to it, it'll cost us about $20,000 to repair it, to patch it.
If that happens,
for the
then
coming
we
year.
can decide if we wanna buy
Yeah.
one.
Well, we gotta get it moving, at least start with administration, each line item tell us. Just get it started.
Well, what we've done in the past is, instead of 600, you set a figure and said, here, you prioritize these projects.
Do y'all want to do it like that, board members?
Say that one more time.
Of course, with the 350 figure this year, it's kind of difficult, but,
that makes it big.
what you've done in the past is say, okay, you're saying you need these, here's 300,000, you
Fixed, that's right.
prioritize them, you do what you think with that 300 the best you can.
Right.
Well, and the way I see that, if you come up in next December and you need a boiler,
We
you
gotta
gonna
do
get
it.
one, you gotta do it.
We gotta do
You
it.
know, I mean, you know, you
We'll
gotta do
buy
it.
it when it happens.
You know, so do you put it in the budget now,
Yeah, I like that
Or-
approach.
I agree. That's what we did last year.
or just if you need it by?
Give them the sum of money to work with.
But my thing is, if you give them some money to work with and they spend it and then the boiler blows up, you gotta buy a boiler too.
But the sum of money you're giving them is.
Boiler blows up, it ain't going
cover
away.
these items
That's right.
I mean,
As they
the
can.
350 and the 85 are two things that I think can be deferred until such time as we decide there's a need for the parking lot, or after we move
Well,
into.
they're already parking in that area anyway, it's just gravel, isn't it?
No, this is a different
that where we
parking
are?
lot.
It's where you
It's
see
where-
all the material that's
Oh,
bad.
Yeah, it's right behind the administration building.
we're making an assumption that a lot of people are gonna be coming down that way to park because the door's gonna move. I think they're probably right, but we can't wait and see if they're right.
And we can try to direct people to the other parking lot. I mean, I've always said that the big parking lot, next to Barnes Street,
Oh, that can accommodate.
it's underutilized.
Yeah.
Oh, ain't no question about
Yeah,
that.
It is.
But it's gonna be more underutilized moving forward.
Yeah, if people can,
If they got an option, it will be.
Yeah.
yeah,
If they don't have an option, then they'll
Yeah.
use it.
yeah.
Well, you're gonna have to put a gate out there on the admin
I know, they'll
building for
park.
parking for this building only or something.
That's right.
Which you could do that.
And along those lines, I have been approached about, there were discussions about, Body Street, either closing it or keeping it open. I think the last we've decided is we'll just keep it open, but it is in the contract for Daniels and Daniels to bring that road back to its repair. So if we are gonna work a deal with the,
Well, our
Sam?
DOT representative asked me every time he sees me, do you still need that money? So
I think.
He's willing to chase
My
it.
preference is, well, just me, is to close that road.
And extend Barnes Street, right?
Yeah.
that's what
yeah,
they're talking
that's
about.
what we would do, yeah.
But there's,
I think that would be, if we make it work, we need to get back into that, see if we can't make it work.
okay, well, we need
We need to
to,
do it
I
sooner or
think
later.
if they close that in one way, the rest of that road down.
They're gonna be less likely to park over there.
they're
That's
gonna-
right.
There's gonna be more parking available, because they're gonna
Well,
do
that's
parking a little different, and it's gonna help those
Pedestrians.
businesses that are in that area, and it's gonna probably allow for more businesses to go in there.
Yeah, the
Because we got
argu-
some traffic.
the argument by the town was they needed access through Barnes Street, for fires, and the Richardson Funeral Home fire, they got to it. And it
Wouldn't
wasn't.
get to it quick enough, though. It's two sides of that coin.
They got to it. And then the cost of Barnes Street extension, how it was gonna be paid, DOT, the city, the town, the county. There's been
Numerous.
numerous theories on that, so, I think we do need to get back with the mayor and the,
We'll do that.
manager.
I've got my notes, I know exactly what was said in that meeting, and somebody was with me, I believe,
think I was
you were with me, and I believe Ms. Richardson was with
Right.
me. Yeah, you two were with me because it's y'all's area.
So,
Well,
I just wanna,
Well, if you're gonna close it, how you gonna close it? I mean, you gonna leave an alley there?
it'll be,
You'll have access from the back to
back.
get to that parking lot that's over behind there.
from Elm Street, you'll go up to where the current, the beginning of the building, new building, will be the end of the drive area.
Which
And-
just further
And from there
secures
to,
that area.
and
Huh?
from,
It just
Secure-
further secures
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely, Definitely, and particularly where the judges and all
Yeah,
of
you're
That's
them.
going
right.
through all this with the courthouse to have this secured, and then you got this wide open
That's
traffic
right.
area.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then the rest of it will be a pedestrian, area.
Area.
It will not be a parking area or a road at all. So,
Back on administration, the crack ceiling is always money well spent. If you don't do that, you're gonna be paving a whole lot quicker. The LED lights is money well spent. If you're gonna continue to watch the boiler, can we continue to watch the roof? Because the roof don't need to be replaced until after you replace the boiler, because there's so much work gonna go on up there during that process. Somewhere it says extensive leaking. I ain't seen extensive leaking in our building. Is it extensive?
it's, anytime there's a hard rain, we have tiles that get dark, and there's some areas throughout the building that inevitably
Gonna leak some?
gonna leak, but I'm not sure 100,
that's a flat roof too, isn't
actually, that's the whole existing,
That's the whole existing admin building.
yeah, the whole building.
it? Yeah, isn't it flat?
It is a flat roof.
Go ahead, y'all
Yeah.
can raise it.
It does leak.
So it'll drain, cause then a flat roof, water gonna find its way.
Well, you got to.
Some way to get in.
Yeah.
sometimes it's, you know, we have an issue where two pipes that are, what do you call it, coupled,
Yep,
will break off.
yep,
You know,
that's true.
yeah. And, other times it'll be from the roof. More often it's just some leak in the roof.
I would, if you're gonna hold off the boiler, I'd hold off the roof and the parking lot.
Okay?
You mean the ceiling, parking lot ceiling, or the parking lot light?
The parking lot itself on Elm Street where we just talked about.
Oh.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
the ceiling
right.
needs to be done, the lights need to be done, utility conference room, that thing needs something done to it. I don't know where it's $20,000 worth, but
I was wondering about, I mean, we're getting by like, I mean, I just don't know about that $20,000.
but when you walk in that front area of utilities, do you go in there someday? What do you say?
They've already started actually, putting in a
A
wall.
bigger,
Oh, they have?
Yeah.
Well, we can take it off there, get that done.
Um,
are they gonna get it
I
done
thought
in
they were
this
taking
budget
down a
year?
wall.
I think that's where they're talking about, you know, where they're,
Filling in that hole where those monitors are, right? And putting
Yeah.
them bigger. So
Yeah,
they've
when
already
you
started
walk in there
doing
on
it.
your right.
On that side.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would keep that in, and the 10 and the 15, which totals 45, and if y'all wanna make it 45, that's fine. If you wanna add another 15 or something, so he can have a little pot of money to deal with.
Can you patch the roof? I mean, what about roof repairs?
Instead of replacing the whole thing.
Well, honestly, the building's age, you shouldn't be putting a new roof on it quite yet.
It seemed like it'd be better to put a roof on than to keep leaking, run the walls and everything else in there.
Well, the issue there is if you're gonna go up there and take those huge boilers and all
That's
off,
what I mean,
but
replace
you
all
need to
those.
wait till after you do that to replace the roof, because everything's gonna change, you gotta have new curves. The curves are gonna get a lot smaller, you're gonna be closed up big holes in the roof, that don't need to happen till after the boiler.
And then 45.
Okay.
So you want,
So we got 45.
45.
you want
45.
60, you want it 45.
Well, let's do 45 and see where else
All right.
we are down the line, and if we can add a little bit to that for the building. Because we are gonna, we are gonna have to buy some new towels, and without a new roof, we're gonna
Buy
have,
some buckets.
yeah, buy some buckets.
It don't leak that
Get them from
bad.
Bill Hill, he's got plenty.
For that.
So next, public buildings. The elevator, we were gonna check on that price. New roof at health department.
Well, it's obvious, your department head didn't want to do that.
Yeah,
He'll be mad if you do it.
Ag Center kitchen renovation and lighting upgrade around Ag Center entrance.
I totally support the upgrading the lighting around the entrance.
That kitchen at that ag needs something done.
And get
to
rid
it.
of them wooden poles. I agree, it does need to have something done to it, Mayor, but I don't know if it needs $50,000
I'm gonna need
done to it.
$50,000, but I think it needs to go in there and do something.
So the kitchen,
It does.
Because it's used a lot, and I've been in there and helped them cook stuff, it's very inconvenient.
What you wanna give?
Well, that's,
But, I mean, I think they can get it
if you're
less than
talking about,
$50,000.
if you're talking about projects that can wait, and that's one of them.
I mean, they don't have to have an island and all that.
20 or
stuff.
25?
I worked down there for 30 years. And,
What
as
that
an
building,
advocate, we replaced refrigerators and stuff in there. I don't see the need
The
that they
chemical
have to
laboratory.
Why don't you, if you're talking
replace
about
those
the
cabinets.
kitchen, why don't you,
Laboratory.
why don't you delay that and not approve it today, but let them come back with some proposal on what it would actually take to do what needs to be done in there, which will probably be a lot less than $50,000. And then maybe we could consider it at some point down the road, but
I'm game for that.
That
If they
sounds good
want
to me.
custom cabinets and granite countertops, you
Well,
wouldn't
yeah.
spend that much.
Okay,
you know.
elevator, in the sheriff's office. I guess we need to address that. At what cost, I'm not sure.
can that, can that not be funded through the courthouse project?
It's not part of the project. If we do we
Can
can
it
do
be
a change
funded
order.
through the courthouse project?
How is the contingency item? How is the contingency money looking on that project?
I think it looks strong. The problem is, if we do it with that contractor, we pay him 15%.
I wouldn't do it with that contractor, but.
We could use that
I
money.
could give Derek some ways to get this probably somewhere about half that cost.
Mike.
Derek.
The new Derek. And I've called Mike Derek several times. He
Do you
don't.
know what the contingency is in that project?
We haven't used any contingency, but I know we've made some changes, positive and negative within there, and so
It's been balancing
Yeah,
itself
it's
out.
pretty much been balancing itself
we were
out.
just kinda,
But you can spend some of that
Contingency.
contingency item outside of the contractor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we should do, just not approve
And
your
let
plan.
Robbie work with him to try to get the price down.
Let's just do that and let it be a contingency money.
Okay, so total for that section is 20,000?
We're doing good so far.
What'd you do about the roof in the health
Yeah, the
department?
health department
No,
roof.
Bill
No.
doesn't want that.
No.
You couldn't see him, but I could yesterday.
Yeah,
He was over here.
he was going, like, the,
5 more buckets.
Y'all keep remembering now that camera's running up there.
yeah. Can we go and close that? Okay, Parks and Recreation,
No, okay. Are we still in public buildings?
I think we,
We talked about the elevator
You,
and
you ain't got.
we got the lighting
20,000.
upgrade.
Your park and
no, you
recreation
do
fund.
have an old
MIS
one, I'm
is
sorry,
next.
you do have an old one, we took that off.
okay.
What did we say on the
Oh, yeah, we
health
took
department
Parks and
roof?
Rec because they had money in their budget.
Not gonna
Well, we
do the
said
health
we'd wait and
department
see
roof.
if we could fund that, with the Miracle
He's
Park
reading over.
Oh, okay.
grant money.
MIS
So
technology.
the only thing we agreed to under public buildings was the elevator through contingency with the courthouse and the lighting upgrade, right?
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
So you only got that 175 becomes 20,000.
Yeah, correct.
MIS. She did get it from 200 to 92, but I'm just, I'm not convinced it's a need.
I don't need it at all as one commissioner.
I mean, we use it once a
I
month.
know he'd like it, but. What?
Let's,
That means use once a month or something.
yeah, want to use one, but why don't we look at another year of growth and see where we are.
Okay.
Revenue next year. Do
Okay.
you promote doing the first two?
Are y'all good with the first two?
Technology.
I think we are threatened by ransomware
Yep.
people, and we
I
need,
don't like to leave myself in a position of, I told you so.
yeah. Okay, so the other two good? 19, 250 and 22,
We have, I'll have your old
41,
Sir.
250,
41,
250.
I
250.
come up with 31, 250, but you're right.
Sheriff's Office, is that next?
Yes.
Oh, I got the right one? Oh, I'm sorry. Here, you take
No,
that.
go ahead.
Y'all look like me with my agendas.
18 vehicles, 13 vehicles have over 100,000 miles. He wants 5 additional vehicles for his 2 new transport officers and his 3 new courthouse deputies.
I think that transport officers is a new problem. I mean, it's just getting worse and worse. We're gonna probably have to help them out with that.
I am a long way from being convinced that these sheriff vehicles need to be replaced before they get to 100,000 miles or 100,000 miles. I've just not
13
bought
on
into
the
that
one
yet.
time.
How do the rest of y'all feel about that?
What y'all did last year, just to remind you, y'all gave them a certain amount and said buy whatever vehicles you
We
want.
did. should, on the transports you mentioned, Dan, we are trying to get that done another way. We've got to move that somewhere to get it off the sheriff. I don't know how long that's gonna take. But I really kinda hate to see us employ people and buy vehicles, which is gonna only solidify our continuing involvement in it. I don't, see, do we have Lisa, do we have a chance of getting relieved of some of that at some time? Cause
I think we do.
I hope we do, Fred.
Well,
Through the
yeah,
association?
I think, yeah, but, yeah.
I think there's always a
That-
chance.
That's possible if we can get all the counties within the association to agree to do it.
Is there anything in this, did anybody look at this last
Very
night? Does
little,
it come
very
up in
little,
here?
very little.
Okay.
We're getting ready to have our.
We're gonna
district
have to do it next year when we come to do the long
Right.
term.
Well, like Lisa said, we're getting ready to have a meeting.
And also, you're gonna have a chance, each county, to send in,
Sure.
and then see, and if I'm representing you, I'll defend it. And hopefully I can get others, and I think I will, because I've heard some talk.
Well, Lisa
about-
had a good point. We got a district meeting coming up real soon. We need to blow that idea out in that
Right,
meeting.
right, it ought to be a part of our discussion.
Well, what other options do we have in the shorter term?
Well, he's handling it now. Depending on what we do with his
Is this
deputies.
something that can be contracted out, or?
Not legally right this minute.
No.
It's more expensive to contract it out.
What the statute says, it has to be done by law enforcement.
Yeah,
I-
and that's
This
what
week-
needs to be changed.
This week, or last week, I allowed him to transfer some lap salary money into jail to pay overtime, not overtime, part-time people to come in and do transports in this year's budget. About 20,000.
That's a whole lot cheaper than it. Can we continue to do that until we see if there's a resolve with it?
We can.
Do you feel good about it?
We're just gonna have to put some more part-time and overtime money in there. Well, not overtime, but
Well, it
part-time.
seems like that's the thing to do if we
Think there's gonna be a
think
fix.
there's gonna be a fix, isn't it?
Well, we're hoping.
Yeah.
And as, each of you see other commissioners in other counties, bring it up.
Oh, we will.
I mean, this is not anything new. This was like last legislative session, they already had their lobbyists working on it with the sheriff's,
They did.
so
Yeah.
it's already out
And
there.
What's brought it to the
It didn't-
limelight though is
it didn't
it's
get in.
increasing so much
Yes,
every
it
year
is.
because of the other, the opioid thing that we're fighting on the other front.
They couldn't get anybody to introduce it as a bill.
We'll
And they said,
we'll
but
get
this
it
time,
introduced.
yeah, but that's what we have to do. And that's why I was saying, talk to any other commissioners, and I'll certainly be doing that too. That, get
So
them,
what would it take to
and take a look
continue
at what's happening in your
with the
county.
part-time people? Funding?
We set aside 20,000 for the rest of the year, so, I'd say 60.
Are the vehicles covered? I mean, are they okay with vehicles for the short term?
Well, if you're gonna replace whatever vehicle replace, there gonna be some vehicles left. These vehicles ought to be all right to do transports with.
Well, I would hope, I know what they would probably say though, they've got excessive mileage, and if they break down on the road, then
Got that.
that's kind of what you're gonna
Yeah.
hear.
One thing I do want y'all to know, he did, he's moving that one number 2 position at narcotics from federal asset forfeiture money. He, just this week, is getting a vehicle with that federal asset money.
He's requesting it in there's a budget amendment for, Monday, requesting another vehicle with, asset forfeiture funds.
So he is getting one vehicle right there.
I think that's,
Let me mention this in connection with vehicles. And he was right yesterday when he said how, because I can remember previous two sheriffs when it came to replacing vehicles, they backed off, you know. And so what you got a pile up there now. And we ought to at least give him enough money to do at least 4 or 5 of them.
I don't have a problem with that, it's gonna have to be more than
Do
that.
more than
You
that.
got to do more than that.
Well,
My first
I'm
year-
saying rather than nothing,
Yeah.
Oh,
we're not
I
gonna do
ain't
nothing.
even talking about nothing, no, I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah.
none of us think that.
Jenkins, I only had one budget with Jenkins, and he requested 10 vehicles, and y'all gave him
Gave him
10
5.
vehicles.
Did we give him
No, we gave him 10, I thought it was
Thought we
half of
gave
that.
5.
I thought it was, that's what I thought.
I'm not sure.
I thought it was 5.
I recommend.
He never
I
got-
think he wanted 12, and we agreed to 10. He was fine, but I'm not sure
Well,
what.
he was also more mileage than what we're talking about now.
That's the part I really don't quite understand.
It
So-
looks like each vehicle is about $30,600. Plus or
Well, I
minus.
think we should tell him not to purchase the transport vehicles at this time. And then it's just a matter of how many of these 13 you want to replace.
13 plus 3, he need,
18 on,
for the courthouse deputies,
take out those two.
for the courthouse security.
Well, 13 of them replacement.
That
That
was
Three.
16, right?
courthouse don't really
And the
need one.
3, yeah, I'm assuming you got, okay, 16.
So the
So we're
courthouse
gonna go with
deputies,
16.
your point
10.
regarding the, what would be excess vehicles if you bought new ones,
Well, correct, yeah, another point. Yeah.
could the courthouse deputies,
You would think.
Do that.
I don't think they're good one.
If they just
because
gonna be
most of their
working in the
time is in the
courthouse, do they
courthouse,
need a
right?
vehicle?
He says when they're not in the courthouse, they're out serving papers, was his answer
can
yesterday,
use
and I
the
understand that, he
vehicle.
don't send them home when they're not in the
Well, I
courthouse.
understand that too, but if they're serving papers, it's not like they're on an
That's true.
emergency run.
Correct, yeah.
They can use some of the old.
So what you're
cars,
saying,
old
Wayne,
cars.
is we should,
I'm just saying
Tell
that's a
them.
possibility.
yeah, potentially to keep some of the old vehicles they use for the.
Some of the old vehicles will be passed down to other departments
Well, they're
Yeah,
gonna
but
have.
you
for,
ain't
for short distance.
Yeah, but you ain't gonna, you don't need 13 of them in
No,
other
no,
departments.
no. What do you think the number is?
Let's give him 8.
No,
8 or 10.
That other departments?
Give them
or
13.
claiming?
13.
I mean, it's
Why don't we
rare
do
that we're
13
one
and
of
let him
theirs that
use
we
the
can
old
keep
vehicles
use
for
it
the
very long,
courthouse?
because
How about
they
10,
destroy
let them
them.
use old vehicles
That's
for
what I
the
was
courthouse?
They do destroy, they really do wear them down, so when we get those police vehicles, we might be able to use them for 1 or 2 or 3 years, but
Well, you're gonna get them, you're gonna get vehicles every year because
he's gonna,
he's
he's gonna
saying
be
they're
able to-
wearing them out at 30 a year. So they got 90, they last about 3 years to get to 100,000 miles, he's saying. So there's always gonna be excess vehicles
Always.
for short runs, things that are not of an emergency nature.
Yeah,
Could we keep,
397.
13 would be about 400,000.
Did you negotiate with him on the vehicles at all? Has it come down for what he originally asked for, or is this what he originally asked for?
He came down
It's
on,
already come
for
down.
2 because He wanted
Because-
5
Yeah, I understand that, but the
deputies.
replacements, it started at 13.
Right. So it started at 20 total, and now it's
Gotcha.
18 because we did,
But
What- what-
I'm sorry, the replacements have always been 13, and then
Okay.
the additional
Got it.
ones were based on the positions.
So the 3 positions, we're gonna suggest that he keep his best ones, the transport officers, we're gonna buy time with that. So you're down to the 13, I've heard
that's
7,
400.
8, 10, and 13.
I'm kinda with 13.
Let's do 13. If you don't, you're gonna have more, you're gonna ask for more next year.
So he's gonna have more next year anyway.
Well, I know that you're gonna ask for more than he would if we just kinda,
Well, I could support 10, but, I mean, it's a board decision.
I don't have a problem with 13.
I got 2 at 13, I got 1 at 10. Fred, what you wanna do? I got 2 at 10, what you wanna do?
I'm gonna tell
Let's
you.
go and give him 13.
All right, I got 3 13s,
I'm 10.
I got 3 tens, Miss Lou, you got to break the tie, I'm sorry.
Okay, so this does not include transport,
No, ma'am.
you're
It's the
not
re-
getting that.
He's not
Got
getting
nothing to do
that.
with transport.
Now, if he wants to allocate one of them,
What we're doing there is telling him to use some of the vehicles he's getting out of for transport.
Okay, my question on that is, if this transport, that is transporting these people that need, and he's going everywhere with them, long distance.
Right.
Will these extra cars suffice that?
There's no reason why they shouldn't. They will maintain if they got 100,000
That's
miles
what I'm
on.
looking at.
I use Mr. Bellfield's analogy, how many miles you got on your
But
vehicle?
that is completely separate from the
213
13 vehicles.
That's right, yeah, it's
That
got
ain't-
nothing to do
That
with
ain't got
it.
nothing to do with the 13
That's
or the
true.
10.
No, it's 13 replacements.
Well, I was just thinking of the transport, about it doing such long travel for
Mhm.
transporting
Right.
with those replacements.
That don't concern me.
New vehicles and to do that.
You think 13 or 13?
Well, like I said, he's gonna be back next year and asking for some more, so I will consider, go with the 10, because the thing about it is, we're trying to, he's not the only
Trying to save some money for raises.
department that we're trying to help. So I will go with the 10.
I just make sure we understand something now, because the comment I just heard, what you do here, 13 or 10, has nothing to do with raises.
Oh, no.
This is capital money here
That's
that we're
right.
talking about. It's not current expense, so
Well,
the
it's
decision
almost
you
current.
make here has nothing to do with raises.
It don't.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was clear to everybody.
But it's somewhat
Tied
current
together.
expense because you're gonna be dealing with it every year, but it really ain't. It's
No,
capital.
it's capital.
Strictly
This
capital.
is capital we're talking about here.
I mean, if we get back to the bottom line and we see we can give him more,
Well, yeah, that's almost in.
But
in
what
bottom
we've
line.
done is we've, you know, and I think it's reasonable, is we've looked at a different approach for the transports. And, we've said you need to use older vehicles for the courthouse because you're not necessarily on emergency runs. And so what's left is 13 vehicles. He told us yesterday, he's got 90 vehicles that he turns 100,000 miles in 3 years. Now, I don't know if 100's right or 150's right or whatever, but that's what the sheriff's belief is, that 100,000 miles, you're putting the officers at risk out there with those vehicles when you get that kind of mileage. So,
And that's the part, Wayne, that I don't buy into.
you know, but I just have to,
understand. You got
he's
Mr.
the sheriff, I have
Sheriff,
to,
I got you.
I have to believe that he's gonna stand before us and be honest with
And
us.
I'm thinking 100,000 miles on one of them cars might be like 150 on mine.
It's
You know,
hard-
I mean,
it's
that-
hard miles.
It's hard miles.
Those cars
You let them
supposed
pass
to
you
be.
sometime, you know.
That
Those-
car's built different too.
That,
though.
yeah, that's what
They
I'm
are.
getting ready to say.
What are
Those
they?
cars are built different
You
from
know,
just
I
an
mean,
ordinary
I got
road.
160,000, 170,000 on my vehicle, but if it breaks down, I just let it break down. I call AAA or call Sharon and I go on about my way.
Won't you get Sheriff's phone number then?
I wouldn't call the sheriff.
Tell the sheriff.
Does
to call the sheriff.
anybody dispute that we have a 4-3 vote on 10? Anybody not agree with that? Go ahead, Mr. Man.
okay,
So
that's
10.
30, that's 311,
It was 305.
305,000,
So 305 for 10 vehicles.
yes. And then the laptops,
I personally think we committed to that last.
yeah, we did. Question is, we can reduce it by 2 if you're not hiring, if you don't, the transport officers.
If you're not hiring two officers, well, we don't know that yet, we ain't got that yet.
And the 3 courtroom deputies, if they're using existing cars, they still need the additional hardware, I guess.
I guess
Oh,
hardware
yeah,
is
you
the
got to
biggest
have the,
expense.
yeah,
They need a
you
laptop.
get the new car, you got to put it in, you can't get the old one out. But it don't matter anyway,
So,
because it's.
Is that right? You got to put a new computer in a new car?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't.
Well, no, you could move one, but
caught up.
He's replacing-
But if they're 4 or 5 years old, it's
Yeah,
time to
they-
replace
Well,
the laptop
he's
anyway.
replacing, what we agreed to do, we would replace them all in a 2-year cycle.
Okay, so,
The laptop.
So how many,
You talking about the replacing the
Laptop.
laptop?
No,
The-
the cars, yeah.
30,
But I thought we-
how much is 165 divided by 39?
Why don't we
44.
just leave that one alone, Z, and let it?
Give them the extra
Yeah.
two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
put it all in there, right?
Okay, 165, 335. Next, the CAD system. I think the county cost is 381,000.
I don't know enough about that to even talk about it, so.
They've been talking about it for several years. Go ahead.
I was gonna, based on what they were showing yesterday, it does appear that they would have some maintenance savings of 112,000. So I'm thinking that, but that would be something we need to check on if it was the 381,821 less the maintenance costs for the current year.
Well, it was presented yesterday, that's what it was,
It looks like to me the net cost won't but about $2,000.
200, 200.
Over a 10-year period.
Two,
No, for the current year.
The maintenance cost savings did not come off of the number the way they presented it
Oh,
yesterday.
it didn't?
It did not.
Oh, okay, okay.
So what you're saying is correct. I think we could remove that number from this number, is that not what you were saying?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's what
You
he,
can
way
what
he
now?
presented it.
They have maintenance costs that they've budgeted in operating expenses.
That we
um,
can take off.
That we should be able to take off if they upgrade this CAD, record management system and jail management
Just
system.
make sure that when we go back, just make sure when we go back, if they approve this, make sure when we go back to the budget, we
112,000.
reduce that maintenance.
Okay.
reducing that to 40-some thousand.
You taking the.
Is everyone
taking
good
out-
with
Taking the whole,
What's your recommendation?
381,000 off?
381 minus some savings and maintenance costs?
What is the total on that then?
What it come out to?
If you get it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you.
Be able to find it with the color
So it
photograph.
looks like, this is their total, the total maintenance cost right now is 112,990,
Per year.
but 78,000 of that is, no. The county's portion is 112, so it looks like you could take off 112,000 from the 381.
I know that's the note I made yesterday, but I don't know that I feel like that's right, no.
That's what I was thinking. So it would be about 268,000, 269,000.
But again,
268,831.
we got, this is the 112 is currently in the operating budget.
Understand.
So we need to put the 381 here,
And you gonna take it out over there,
and then we'll take it out over there.
whatever y'all need to.
Okay.
And leave 380.
Yeah.
Will you send us an email that you took it out, sir?
Yeah. I promise you. That's what I just told her a while ago. Make sure we take that out. We'll get them to help us find it, since they're representing. Okay, EMS. Ambulance remounts, community paramedic vehicle, Sprinter style ambulance for convalescents, ballistic vest and accessories, and laptops.
I think while you do these remounts, you better do it, because it come to the day that the state ain't gonna approve them bodies. And that you might be prolonging a bigger expense. That's just my thought.
Of course, again, as I mentioned yesterday, up until about 2 years ago, y'all were each year financing these. In fact, they show up on our budget. I'll tell you what year you did it. I'm not suggesting that we necessarily finance it, because I think we'll be able to take it out of funds, but,
I think the last time it was financed was in fiscal year 15.
yeah, 15 or 16.
15.
Is somebody keeping up with how many of these we are doing each year?
Oh,
Here you go, I'm sorry.
They did 3 this past year.
Yeah, 14,
I think that's
15,
correct.
we did them in 14 and 15
How many of them is it those,
that we're still paying for.
How many?
of these vehicles is it total?
Never where that stands. Yeah, it is a good program, I just don't know where it stands.
Well, 180,000 miles, that would be the point I start worrying about it.
Yeah, and he had his expense in there, repairs.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would support the remounts if we're taking it line by line.
Yep. Everybody all right with that?
The entire,
Yeah.
All right.
yeah, okay.
370, 800. Community paramedic vehicle. This is the
That we got-
program that we first got a 2-year grant from the Duke Foundation. And then this year, the hospital gave us 150,000, and we added additional personnel.
Yeah, there's one.
And I've talked to Stacy Jesso and encouraged them to give us that again, but I haven't.
Hospital.
So that offsets some of this expense.
Foundation.
No, it just takes care of the salaries.
Take care of the salary,
Yeah.
so we're furnishing the total vehicle.
There might be a little money left in that 150, but
kind
I
of-
don't know. No, I'm sorry. We got 125 or 50.
150 from last
Okay,
year.
and the total budget was 185.
But what kind of vehicle do they really need for this program? Do they need a $50,000 vehicle?
Tahoe.
When I
I mean,
asked,
what,
They
what,
got a
what are
lot.
they hauling around is what I'm trying to figure out.
Equipment.
Well, I mean, is it, what kind of equipment? Is it equipment that would fit in
when
Prius.
a smaller van or?
when I've heard other counties give their presentation, they just use a car.
But I'm saying they got these little small vans you see running around. Would something like that work? I don't know. It just seems like 50,000 is a little bit excessive
They're gonna use
for
whatever.
a vehicle to haul this stuff around, whatever they're hauling around. I
That
support
little
the
tran-
program.
That little transport van looked like it would work well.
That's what I'm
Right.
talking
And
about.
Right,
equipment.
it's called a transport
Yeah,
van.
I don't know what they cost, probably half.
Under state contract, it'd be about half that, exactly.
Why would they ask for a four-wheel drive vehicle? I mean, are they thinking about having to go
That's what they got.
when the weather's bad, snow, ice, something like that? I don't know.
Are they asking for four-wheel drive?
Well, I see.
Must be.
It's a Tahoe, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, the old one is the Tahoe.
no, they're asking for the
Owned
Tahoe.
Expedition.
It
does-
says-
Oh, I see.
He
I see.
does have a sub-note there, Wayne, SUV
SUV
needed to accommodate equipment for program.
Well, that's
but
what
the
I asked,
transport
what kind
van-
of equipment
That's-
that they got that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
need.
Well, it would go in a transport van if it'd go in a, there's
I
gonna
would
only
think.
ever be one person in the vehicle, right?
Yeah. Well, it
I know, I
could
think
be two,
so.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
They take people to, do they
No.
take?
No.
It's just home business.
He follows up, yeah. He follows up on
I think
discharges.
they have taken some people to a, program, like a substance abuse program. But, that's not their normal thing.
Not my understanding of the program. I wouldn't
Yeah,
have thought
I
there'd
would-
been anybody
I
in
would
there.
think one
Can
of those
you,
little transport vans would probably work.
Is that 25, 30?
Can you talk to, I mean, find out why they need a four-wheel drive vehicle. And if there's justification for it, then we may need to rethink
You're
it.
talking about like a minivan kind of?
Uh,
Yeah.
If there's a lot of, if the back end's full of
It's
equipment,
those transport vans.
The equipment probably
Yeah.
costs
Ford
as much
makes
as the
one that's
vehicle.
very
Okay,
cheap.
I
You see
But I
more
mean,
and more of them.
if you can get this equipment that goes in a Tahoe, you can't get it in one of these
Oh,
transport
you can
vans.
get it in there.
So there's plenty of room.
Sure.
Can we put in 30,000 and let that,
And
Yeah,
encourage
maximum.
them to go that route.
is that good with everybody?
Yes, sir. Write down the word transport van, because that's what we look at. I know Ford makes one, I'm sure the rest of them do.
Sprinter style ambulance for, convalescence, which is transfers between nursing homes and hospitals and for appointments, dialysis, that kind of stuff. Where we do make some revenue on that.
And is that what you asked yesterday, if it was possible to do a remount on it? Is that where you?
No,
asked the
that
question?
was the,
That was something else?
that was the food delivery.
Oh,
Senior
yeah, you're right,
center.
you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. Okay.
That one's one of them
Well,
little
this-
vans you were just talking about. for
Yeah,
the-
this ain't, that you
on
can't
permit.
remount that anyway, because it's not done like that.
I don't think he's asking for too much here when it's got $170,000 on it and high maintenance cost.
I'm fine. Everybody okay?
Yep.
The best.
The vest,
That-
you wanna do half of them? Half of them this year?
That's,
Which half do you protect?
Which half's being protected right now?
None of them.
I'm just trying to split it up over 2 years. It's up to y'all.
kinda like, if it may never happen. If it ever does, we'll say, well,
How many have we had?
you know, I don't know.
in the past?
Hmm?
None.
Probably not a
Yeah.
good question.
How many have you ever had?
Brother,
Well, you got one that has been in it 5 times, you said yesterday. It did sound like done all over Nash County,
No,
but
thank goodness it wasn't.
I'm not sure.
Well, it's a
But-
different world we're in today.
Don't think
than
you
it
can't
was
have them here,
yesterday.
you know, I mean, it's just
It
like,
can.
we talking about security at church, we ain't never locked our church doors, you know?
We've
We do
never,
that.
we've
But
never
it-
had a
We do that
uniformed
on
officer in our
Thursday.
church
We do.
until the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Now we've got a uniformed officer in the church.
But we had people just walk in there.
That's sad too.
It is sad.
Yeah. We
I
have,
be a
run
bad
by
place to walk
and they're not
into.
we
needed,
don't have
they
a
need to
uniform
not have
officer,
it.
but
Too
we got
damage.
2
There's a lot of weapons in there.
people with concealed
just-
weapons.
it's not a gun free zone.
Certified to carry them. In there. People just walk right in.
Man, I want you to call the question.
Okay.
I say keep it in there. That's just one commission.
Keep it in there?
Yes. I strongly
Keep it in there?
support it.
I do.
I'll never say no, I mean, I don't.
At some point, we
We got to, we got
can't
to.
give EMS everything they
Can
want every
we,
time.
can we divide it up? I don't know. Well,
But,
You
okay,
never know when the situation come up and they don't have them.
It's like,
If
it's like
somebody
insurance.
loses
You
a life
don't
and
need it
then
till
we
you
say,
need it.
Brother,
well,
lay there and rock.
That's
we
right.
wish we had it.
you hope you don't ever need it,
You hope you don't ever need it.
Yeah, but I say put them in there.
Like security.
so,
House,
we,
every month.
1, 2, 3,
Put 'em
do we
in.
have a fourth to keep it in?
I want it in.
Keep it in, okay. 57.
Yeah.
Abstain.
Okay, laptops, 142,818 is the new number, 142,818.
Why don't we delay
laptops
that?
don't last 8 years.
Why don't we delay that for a year? Cause you gave me everything else on the list. Maybe that'll make the math.
Well, cut back.
What is the maintenance cost for 1 year if you delayed it?
Did he tell us that?
7207?
It's out of warranty, so it's as needed,
Have needed, right?
repairs as needed.
And 7 years old, I don't know if you don't have a problem getting them repaired.
Yeah.
They'll tell you to throw it away and get you
I-
another
You can
one.
get them repaired, it's just expensive.
Yeah, it'll be highly
That's the small
expensive.
people that do.
What did it, do you have any idea what it cost to repair them this year?
I don't have that cost. I don't know how many they were. I can find out.
Is 28 the total number that you got?
That they want.
No, how many do they have? They already replaced them all.
I believe it's 28.
Yeah, I would
Well, I
think
really don't have a
about
problem
it.
delaying that for a year if the maintenance cost is, not,
I don't
Check on the
need
maintenance cost.
that they've had a pretty good day so far.
Well, that's what that's my thing, yeah. Everybody okay with that? All right.
Okay. Inspections,
You say you gonna pay for that out of this year's budget?
We can pay for both of those things out of this year's budget by doing a budget amendment reflecting the increased revenues from that
So
department
that don't affect next year's budget at all?
at all.
Everybody okay with
What are
that?
we talking about?
We on inspections, the
She's got
truck,
enough money to do
and the
that.
software,
For the software?
and the trucks.
So they got enough money already to pay for that?
They don't have it until you do a budget amendment to reflect the increased revenues they've brought in with that solar farm, 180,000.
What they did, the revenue on the inspection fees, permits are way higher than what.
Well, I
we
know
did.
these guys are pushed and they got a lot to do, and when they need to be there, they need to be
Yeah.
there, but what's the difference in them running a vehicle with a few more miles?
These are 2007 vehicles.
With 125 to 150,000 miles.
Right.
We just went through that logic with the sheriff's department, I mean, why would it not apply here?
And those vehicles are going to other departments.
But one thing, Wayne, the age of 11 years old, age and miles, both hurt a vehicle, you know that.
Yeah, well, I just know if I'm going somewhere to do something in that department and I break down, then I've got some time delay, but that's the extent of the problem. But I'm okay.
Yeah, we're not putting it in next year's, so it's zero, you can zero it out for
So you
next
had
year's.
marked that one off.
So
for
you
the
won't
budget,
cover it
right?
this year's
But we're
budget.
gonna do a budget amendment.
Yeah.
We budgeted 325,000 in revenues and we're at 480. We're gonna go over 500 for the
Okay.
year. So that's where we're gonna do a budget amendment to allow them to spend that additional money
For the software also.
and the software. But that's, both of those are in this year's
So
budget.
it's out of the budget.
It's out of the budget for next year.
Mark it off.
And we will have a budget amendment for you probably the 16th.
And are they gonna get those on state contracts similar to what Soil and Water is? Soil and Water said they could get it for 25 for a four-wheel drive truck.
I think federal pays for part of that.
The four-wheel drive, soil and water?
County
Yeah,
part.
that's what they said yesterday. They could, on state contract, get a four-wheel drive for 25. So they're talking about,
It's stripped. I mean, it's not with the bells and whistles.
what are you talking about? I don't get.
You're talking about the four-wheel drive truck for
I
24,000?
mean, the inspection truck needs
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought
bells
you,
and
Oh,
whistles?
the inspection trucks, that figure does include their toolbox and the light bar that goes on the top.
yeah, I thought you'd gone over
Did you
to
look
the
some
next
sort of
line item.
State contract or is it?
And
Federally funded.
it was suggested
Well, I don't know how it's
yesterday,
funded, but that's what it said yesterday.
it was suggested yesterday we do four-wheel drives instead of two.
I just highly recommend do that.
Again, we'll do a budget amendment in the next month.
Are they getting the Ranger again? Is that what proposed? See, they don't use full-size trucks now.
Didn't she say a 150?
I ain't never seen.
She
them
did
use
say a
Range.
150.
Yeah.
The ones I've seen running around are 150s, and she said 150 yesterday.
She
Yeah,
did.
she said she was getting 150s.
I know they're driving Rangers now. That's what Kevin's been driving for
On
years.
state
I think
contract.
it's state
Would
contract.
be more aware than I am.
Okay.
I do
What's that
remember
one?
she said
I don't know
150.
why they
Well,
couldn't use the
forget my
Ranger.
comment, you can't even, they don't make Rangers no more, that goes away. But they are driving Rangers now, but they quit making them in 2011. I don't know why I'm arguing about it. Next item, not that they're gonna be Fords, but they don't make that small truck anymore.
Four-wheel drive, truck for soil and water, 24,596. That's the one I was talking, Mr. Outlaw, that it's,
Stripped,
yeah, I mean, it's
basic.
a basic truck. That's on state contract.
What, do you need any more than that, or? I mean,
That's what they asked for.
I think
I
they
say
get,
we can-
Be careful what you ask for.
y'all good with that?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
She needs the lights and all the other stuff.
Yeah. She won't have lights and bars and stuff like
She,
Oh.
that would be a cheap one.
that. And the last thing on capital is the delivery truck with heating and cooling unit for home delivered meals for senior services, replace existing delivery truck.
2005 with 175,000 miles. Is what was stated yesterday, according to my notes.
What are we up to?
As I understand, this is an enclosed truck, it's got
Trying to add it. I need-
warm and cold compartments in it, right?
That's right.
You take a 150 truck and you put this on there. A
They
F-150.
can't do a remount because I asked.
Well, the statement was that the truck is 13 years old, so the body's 13 years old. It probably don't need to do a roof mount on that.
Right, and the current truck is a F-350.
You've seen it, Wayne.
Yeah,
I've seen it, but you know, I mean, I know they're taking out about 200 meals.
Mhm.
And I know when I go pick up my meals, they normally deliver around 10-ish. And I pick up early and deliver, but a lot of the people that pick up, they pick up at noon or a little after. So the meals are sitting in a container that keeps them warm or cold for the cold stuff. I just, there's gotta be a better way to deliver 200 meals than spending $50,000 when you take them to a place and let them sit for 2 hours. I mean, that just kinda seems ridiculous
I
to me.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
They buy high-priced trucks to deliver them,
Yeah.
but yet they sit there 2 hours
Yeah.
after they get there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's different from Meals on Wheels here in Rocky Mountain.
What does Rocky Mountain do?
Okay, in Rocky Mountain, they got containers at church down here, First
Yes,
Presbyterian.
and we do in the county.
And, you go there, the volunteers go there, and they have a staff there that fix up the coolers and everything, and you load
But
them in
whether
your
you
car.
go pick them up, and I'm betting they probably prepare them around 10-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pick them up, you've got some time window where you can pick them up.
Oh, yeah,
So you-
because
you
they
can
got,
probably pick up
they
till
don't
noon
even
or
put them
later.
in, they don't even put them in the equipment,
So
they
they're
have,
sitting in a container that's appropriate for hot or cold,
yeah,
and you pick up whenever you pick up and you deliver.
yeah, you
The only
got,
thing they do different in the county is they deliver them out to the sites.
yeah.
And then they sit in a box until the deliverer comes and picks them up.
And they also said, Wayne, the average delivering 30 meals to individuals a day.
30
meals to individuals is a note I made yesterday.
30 total meals.
30 that they carry to an individual person.
You mean
rather than
this truck
a
goes to
book.
30
You're talking about a
individuals plus
volunteer.
drop-off?
That's what they said yesterday. They not only do the mass delivery, they have 30 more that they deliver themselves.
My point is that if you've got them in the right container, hot or cold,
Sure.
you should be
Don't
able,
matter.
for a 2-hour period,
Sure.
to be able to deliver them on whatever you deliver them on. A transport van, for example.
Right.
I don't know.
so the setup that Rocky Mount has, where they've got one location that the meals are taken to, you know, that's inside the city limits of Rocky Mount, and all of those routes are going out in the city of Rocky Mount. There's not a way for us to have a location, one location out in the county. We're not gonna get volunteers from Middlesex and Bailey and Castile to drive into a central
No.
location to pick those meals
No.
up. So that's, the truck is necessary to get the meals out to the drop-off points.
Not arguing the truck, arguing the type truck. Do you need a hot and cold equipped vehicle to deliver the meals to a place that they're gonna sit for 2 hours?
No, not if they're gonna sit for 2 hours.
Well, they do. I mean, that's
If
just the way it
that's
is.
going on, then we've got
But
an
if
issue
you've
that
got,
we need
if
to
you've
deal
got a
with.
meal in these containers that are for hot or cold, can they sit for 2 hours?
They do have heating elements inside of the bags.
Yeah.
And of course, the coolers have ice in them.
Doesn't it?
But, you know, we're checking temperatures on routes once a month. But I don't know, I mean, I think we need to look into that particular situation.
Maybe.
Well,
I think I'd look into it before I spent $50,000 for a
Once we
vehicle that
have-
you might be able to get by with, you know, a much lesser vehicle.
Is it a hospital employee? I know they make the
Yes.
meal, and a hospital employee drives this truck.
Yes,
Yeah.
Can we pay them?
no,
We don't
What's
pay
the
'em?
No.
con,
no, we pay them through
We
our
pay
meal
for the
contract.
meals, they pay for the meals, that's all.
Do you think it was dictated by the hospital, the type truck possibly?
No,
Okay,
no, we're providing the vehicle.
okay. Well, I have zero knowledge of this subject, so.
I just know in extreme
I got it.
temperatures, we have problems with our temperatures. So if we're in, the dead of winter, we're gonna have problems with our hot meal temperatures. When we're in the dead of summer, we have, start having issues with the cold temperatures. So,
And it's required that those meals be hot.
yes.
Yeah. We are not allowed to deliver a cold
They have to be
meal.
received.
And
Someone has to account for receiving.
Stacy, I keep hearing this 2 hour wait. Now, I delivered meals for,
Right.
what, 12 years.
Right.
And I never knew about that. I didn't have that at that time. Has something changed about that?
No.
Because when they dropped those meals off within at
What
least
you-
45 minutes, there was that.
What you've got in the Westmount community is you've got, the Westmount Ruerton Club is the sponsor of that program in the community.
Sure.
And we've got a calendar, and there's somebody different on that calendar every day. And it is their option to go there anytime they'd like, from 10:15 on up till lunchtime to pick them up. Some of us go at 10:15, some of them don't go till noon or later.
Okay. So
But
that's
that person you
that's
cater to has a right wide range when they have lunch each.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a site
But that-
decision that at times should be
Exactly.
closer. Because I know at
I wanna
Castell,
be consistent,
They
man,
have
probably,
a-
if I wanna eat at 12 o'clock, I wanna eat at 12 o'clock.
they have
Well,
within 30
If anybody
minutes.
can bring me something to eat, I ain't gonna
This
complain.
is- You can put any kind of restriction you want on the volunteers.
That's
It ain't gonna work,
But
right?
you're gonna lose your volunteers,
Exactly.
because they're gonna work at their convenience to deliver these meals out.
Were you through, Miss Richards? Were you finished?
I don't know. No, but I tell you
Well-
what, this, to me, now, this is just, maybe you might say this is one of my passions, but to get these people that shut in those hot meals. And you know what, if you stop and think about it, sometimes it's not altogether about the meal those people to get,
Just the
just to see
companionship.
you, and they want to hold on to you as long as they can. Can't you stay a little longer?
Well,
I'm
that's the
glad
bigger part of
You
it.
know, so to my suggestion is we fund it.
Probably take me 2 days.
Well,
to do it.
yeah, and that's true, they don't, cause I remember,
She wanted to add some more.
I remember delivering a meal, and when I got there, the man was on the floor and couldn't get up, and he said he'd been down there about 2-3 hours.
Well, that's part of the whole program,
Yeah.
that you are there to verify the person is. But it's whatever the majority wants.
That's the only area.
I would say, I would go along with giving it, leaving the request in.
But we did ask her to get other quotes. I think that's one thing. She only had one other quote.
And it was hard.
And
He
it was
had a
60,000.
Well, we need to
$60,000.
get 3 quotes.
Well, and
She
by
can get another
law,
one.
she would have to. I mean,
Yeah.
that was just part of the budgeting
Let's
process.
get another one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say do that and
You
leave
do
it.
that.
Well, just to satisfy the whole board, could we approve this item? Y'all put a number that you want to, and let Stacy get back to the board through email, after she determines if it's possible to do it with a truck that doesn't have this cooling and heating unit on it. Is that the thing to do, Mr.
You gotta
Outlaw?
have-
No, you gotta have.
Whatever the majority.
Well, if you got to,
Well,
she's
Sounds
gonna
like
email
Miss
us.
Stacy's pretty convinced you gotta have this cooling and heating capability.
Yeah.
I'm not.
We're
Has she
using
convinced
federal
you yet?
funds.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
Well,
using federal funds to pay for the meals, and if we test those meals and they don't meet temperature, we're supposed to throw them out. We're not allowed to get reimbursed for them. So, I mean,
How often do you do that testing?
once a month on every route.
And that's always transporting with the vehicle that's got that heating and cooling capability?
No, every route.
Have you ever tested without delivering on just to see if you're maintaining what you need to maintain without the heating and cooling capability, just the box? Have you ever tested it like that?
Yes, because we have other routes that are delivered closer in to the hospital.
don't use that
That we
vehicle.
don't use the heating cooling vehicle. That vehicle is being used as it travels out in the county and has long distances and time
Have
involved.
you ever checked the longer distance without, just as a pilot run to see what it looks like?
I can't say for sure. I'm
mean-
thinking that we have because the truck's been
Okay.
broke down before and we've had to use other vehicles. Whether or not the monthly testing was happening during that time, I do not know.
Did you say, through your reimbursements from federal funds, does that pay for the truck eventually anyway? Not that that makes me feel
No.
good, but, okay, it don't. That's a county furnished item in the program, okay.
Do you, collect from the individuals what they have ability to pay?
We have an obligation using these funds to offer them the opportunity to contribute back to the program, but we cannot require that they pay. So they are informed when they get on the program, and they actually get a monthly statement in the mail letting them know what the value of the meals were, but we cannot require them to pay.
Can one girl
I know.
handle all those checks that come back in?
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
I know when I make,
Probably not.
make, deliveries, once a month, there's an envelope for them. And, when I go back, they give me an envelope back with some money in it or a check in it to turn in. And I haven't talked with the staff, but with the individuals, they contribute based on their ability to
Right.
contribute.
Right, we do the same thing, we just don't get the volunteers involved. That's not really a best practice.
Did you say you had to get another quote on this one anyway?
We will get a third one, yes.
And I thought the one she got from Virginia was not even,
60
I know, but it
thousand.
was, that was without the state
Mm.
discount or
Right.
something.
Probably
So I
not.
wouldn't even count that.
Yeah, it don't count.
See what I'm saying? If it's not within North Carolina's,
Right, so we have to have another North Carolina company that can do the box work for us, that can put that heating, cooling unit on the chassis.
Can we use one of them ambulance remount?
Madison,
Yeah.
not Madison.
I'm not sure what we're gonna end up with now.
Right.
well,
Well, the only thing I'm saying is you got a program that you've always done this way, so it doesn't sound like people are really receptive to looking at a different way to do it. And a different way to do it might be to go out and keep doing it the way you're doing it now, but on your hottest day and your coldest day, go out and do some temperature checks and see what you got. Have you ever done that?
We
That's all
have
I'm asking.
we have been in situations where we were not
Have you
meeting
ever had any
temperatures.
problems
We have had temperature problems in the past.
where you had to throw away meals?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good. If you've done that, that's all I'm asking.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
And they will to give
Well-
it to them.
Well, I'm in support for the request.
Okay, got 2 votes, 3 votes.
I don't know enough about it. I rely on the guys that work, guys and ladies that work in the program.
Well, it's very important because we have here in Rocky Mount, even the way we,
But you don't
Deliver.
even, Rock Mountain don't even use the truck that much, Bill.
no, I know, but I'm just saying that we had one incident where a person got sick as a result of the meal.
Where does this
We
truck
tried to do everything we
You
need
don't
to
want
do to
to
keep
run
that
into
from
the
happening.
I think she said,
Oh, is it?
I think
Sorry.
Salem, wherever.
And you don't
know,
want
all
that
I think
one
she
way and the
mentioned-
other, right?
Yeah.
Dorches and Red Oak and out to Castalia, and it may be Spring Hope. Actually, Bailey and Middlesex and Samaria are supplied by food runners out of Wake County. They
So
have
they don't come from the hospital?
they have a heated vehicle that they bring for those 3 routes.
Okay. How did Wake County get involved in it? I mean, I just need to learn something.
Because of the distance, the hospital, we had issues with them going that distance
Yeah,
for
you
us.
get to Wake Med quicker than you can get to Nash, okay, got it.
Do we still deliver some of the meals to Halifax?
Hiawassee, yes.
Yes.
Their meals
They
are
do
dropped off.
Pick them up?
Yes.
Right, gotcha. Okay. Where are we at, folks?
Do or don't?
I ain't saying
Rather
more.
do or don't.
I'll support it with the other quotes.
Fine.
We're doing our due diligence and trying to.
We're gonna
make it-
pencil in the
I think
48,
you're there somewhere.
5,
I
11.
might need it before long now.
And that total for capital from fund balance is $1,583,000. I'm sorry, $583,163.
1,583,000 what?
163, that compares to
158.
last year's
2.9 to 1.5.
original. Did I give you the revenue?
Just walk through it and make sure we all got the same thing.
Okay.
40,000.
Okay.
You read them, so make sure everybody's got the same.
Okay, so under administrative building, I have the parking, both,
Just the total is fine.
45,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Public buildings, 20,000.
Okay.
The MIS technology, 41,250.
Right.
The sheriff's office, 470,885.
That's the 305 and 165, 335.
What was the total?
Well, I had 305, 550 because that was the,
Oh, okay, so that's where I'm different from you. So it's 305, 550
right,
for the vehicles. Okay,
so the total was 470,885.
okay.
And for emergency communications, sheriff's office, that's 381,821.
What was that public buildings again?
I'm sorry,
Under public buildings, total
20,000.
20.
And under EMS, 551,100. Soil and water conservation, 24,596. And senior services, 48,511.
So you said it's 1,583, 163?
That's what I
I
have.
was off to 550.
1,583,163, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Cut that one half in two, almost.
And last year's appropriation from fund balance for capital items in the original budget and the existing budget, revised budget, 1,406,214. So you're about on par there. And we did add 2 million to the fund balance. so.
One down.
Didn't we?
I think if I understood what Janice said, she wanted us to break for lunch at this point in time.
Oh, okay. We got everyone back. We've got several other things to do today. Positions, you got the agenda, remember you got about a million and a half dollars. We've got position reclasses, new positions, and the outside agency requests. We had a couple, if you want to do the outside agencies first, y'all had 2 questions. My sister's house, I think 2, and Boys and Girls Club. Was that it?
That was it.
That was it.
And we've gotten responses from both of them. You want to read them?
Well, just on my sister's house, the part about the additional funding, she said that the numbers of clients served can fluctuate from year to year, but the number of services of my sister's house has steadily increased in the last 2 years. They've added services of an attorney, 2 therapists, a children's advocate, additional bilingual staff, and once approved by the state, they hope to hire a social worker for each county, in addition to the sheriff's deputy they already fund for each county. So in the past, my sister's house offered shelter, transportation assistance, and court advocacy as its main services. They're excited to offer more professional services to better serve families in crisis in the community. The overall number of clients could be lower this year, but the number of services and the cost of those services have increased greatly. We believe these services will help break the cycle of domestic violence by giving victims the support and tools to transition into a violence-free life. That was the reason for the increase they requested. And the question about funding from the city of Rocky Mount, Edgecombe County. She said they do serve both counties, Nash and Edgecombe, but they do not currently receive any funding from Edgecombe County or the city of Rocky Mount directly. She said, however, funding from the city of Rocky Mount replaced the roof of a shelter last summer at an approximate cost of $20,000. She said this money was not listed as it was not general funds. So the Rocky Mount Police Department keeps a board member on the board of directors of My Sister's House and assists with fundraising endeavors of the agency. The Sheriff of Edgecombe County currently serves as a board member with deputies serving in the past. While it is not direct cash support, there are several ways these areas support the work and mission of My Sister's House. Additionally, the majority of the clients served by My Sister's House are Nash County residents. And then, the question for Boys and Girls Club, I asked if they had a funding formula because of how they were requesting the funding. I think it was 75,000 from City of Rocky Mount, 45 from Nash, and he had 5 from Edgecombe County. And he said, we don't have a formula that we use as we request funding. And he said, below is a breakdown of the 1,213 registered club members that we serve according to the counties we serve. It costs an average of $1,500 per year to serve one young person in our clubs. And he has Nash County with 68% of the members and Edgecombe County with 32% of the members, with the majority of the members. He broke down Nash County, the Rocky Mount portion of Nash County has 404 of the 821 members served from Nash County. Nashville has 197 of those, and 220 are from Bailey, Middlesex, Spring Hope, Southern Nash Middle, and Southern Nash High. And then in the Edgecombe area, 200 are in the Rocky Mount side of Edgecombe County, and 192 are in the Edgecombe County unit.
And what is the Edgecombe County fund?
$5,000.
492.
Right.
Okay.
How many did you say there was from that Bailey Middlesex?
But
Two-
the-
220.
But
I
that's,
said
that's
200, I
that,
meant 220.
that just started, that's the new program that just put it in, that is run through the school system.
So the funding is kind of out of whack.
It is. He said he didn't have a funding formula.
Okay, My Sister's House, 92 this year, requesting 10,000. What's the
Say that again?
9,200,
Okay.
10,000.
Okay.
$800 increase. That's it, fun.
Got one vote to fund them. The extra 800.
Want to fund it?
He said
I
that,
think y'all fund it.
okay, that's 2 votes to do the 800 extra.
I don't,
Bill.
Anybody else?
You want to fund it or not? Yeah.
Okay, that's 3. Anyone else? Okay, we'll keep it like it is.
My issue with it is, if you start, you got a long list there that would treat them different.
Boys and Girls Club, this year they got 25. Initially requested 30, and now they've amended it to ask for 40. They, y'all did give them that 25 yesterday for cash flow
To be reimbursed.
to be reimbursed.
Have you got all you need on that?
I think so.
I got the same issue with it. I don't start picking and choosing the nonprofits to change.
I don't think we ought to give them enough $40,000.
Keep it at 25. Everybody good with that?
They requested 30, right, at first?
And then 40.
Yeah, well.
I think that's the only thing we had open. We still need to get a number from the Forestry Service. And like I said yesterday,
Gateway, where did we end up on that?
I had marked it as the same funding as
Same as
last year.
last year?
Same as last year.
Okay.
Mhm.
and I was gonna get with them about the funding formula
You're just gonna see where the formula is.
Yeah, because it's obviously, it may be a rounding of the funding formula, but clearly it's a slight deviation. Okay, well, we took care of that bullet. Now we've got attachment C. You should all have, that's got the position reclasses and new positions.
He's trying to hide over there behind some chairs, but, welcome, join
Oh,
us there, Linda.
hey, how you doing? Tax office requesting the real property appraiser. Currently has 2 appraisers plus Bert. Not sure when Bert is gonna, he's the supervisor.
Have you heard any talk with his wife retiring that he may not work anymore? Has that come up or not?
I asked that and they've gotten no notice that he's, but they think he may. They think he may.
He might work more days, is that what you said?
I didn't get that off that camera.
It's on there now, and believe it or not, folks sit and watch this thing.
My wife can't get it, so I ain't worried. I'm sure some of y'all will tell her, but that's all.
I feel like we're gonna have Bert as long as Jim's there, and that's,
That ain't too far.
yeah, that's January.
Yeah.
Did you have any issues with the information? I'm sure you don't, that he presented yesterday. Know Jim well enough, he's gonna be very factual. But it seemed to be that we are understaffed based on everybody around us.
Correct. Yeah.
And I know unless you get somebody from somewhere else, that person doesn't walk in there productive. It's a learning curve, and I do know you got at least one down there that is reasonably short term. That's
You know, this
in one of
is
these
on
positions.
January, and if this person, if you hire somebody, can come in and learn the ropes.
Yeah, well, this is the one that I questioned him about starting it in October, November, or January, so, we could do that.
I will start him soon enough before he leaves.
Jim is leaving in January?
That's what he said yesterday.
Now, this is not a gym replacement, though, is it?
Oh, no.
No, but I was talking about orientation, getting him started
If we did it,
in his position.
I'm sorry. If we do it November 1, that would be 2/3 of that amount.
If you look at the workload he laid out yesterday, it sounds like a reasonable request.
I think it is too. I do.
I think it was, I think he said the state recommended 1 per 10,000 parcels, and he says our 2 guys or gals have got 26,000 each.
Right.
And he gave surrounding counties, and they're
Yeah.
all better shape than we are in this particular area. Much better.
8 months, 9 months, or 12 months?
I say 9.
Okay.
That would be
Is that good
October.
with everybody?
That'd be October 1st.
October 1st, fund it?
It don't mean he gonna find somebody by October 1st anyway.
Okay, facility maintenance. Admin, had a frozen position. 68 HVAC tech. He's requesting a 64 facility maintenance technician. Total cost per year, 46,395.
What's the total cost of this one? It
46.
says this is replacing an existing position.
It's a frozen position, it hasn't been budgeted.
Hadn't been budgeted, okay. So it's 46.
This is another one if y'all want to do it for 6 months or 9 months. It just gives us a little more breathing space. We'll have to make up the difference next year, build it in, but.
Well, you got
They don't start it until
one,
next budget, July 1.
Huh?
I said, don't start there. You talking about filling it before next fiscal year?
No, no.
Later than next fiscal year.
Instead of July 1, perhaps doing October 1 or January 1.
Ability to hire.
I think you ought to start in July 1.
Okay, got a
That's
July 1, fund it, starting July 1?
What's your thought, Wayne or Dan? What do y'all?
I'm really okay with it.
If it's
Mike
needed.
says he needs it, I mean, you would probably know better than.
Well, he
than
said,
me.
he said he had 3 people on his true maintenance crew.
This guy's all involved in the water system and all going on in the engineering area.
July 1.
No, it's strictly a building maintenance
Okay.
job.
Who does that now?
Well, you got 3 people that do it now, which includes the jail.
Mhm.
I honestly don't know how he keeps it done with
Yeah.
3 people, I'll be honest with you.
What is the administrative building and the jail, is that the only 2 buildings?
Every county
Every-
building,
every
county
county
building,
building,
and
everywhere.
you adding a
Okay.
couple more.
I agree with you now, I don't
And I
know how 3
think
people.
one of those,
Run 'em around.
one of those employees is down there at the X Center full-time. They are. Did they change it?
That's a
That's
custodian.
a custodian, no, we're not talking about custodians.
You talking about?
Oh, you talking about, okay,
You got talking about maintenance type people.
okay.
You're gonna have somebody that's strong in electrical, somebody in, maybe in heating and air, and a carpenter probably is what he's got now.
Okay, do it.
He's got one.
Everybody good? Okay, July 1, we'll
Yeah.
fund that position.
Mm-hmm.
The
Reclassify.
reclass,
Media.
I would ask that that be approved.
I'm good with that.
So $7,000.
Okay.
Okay. Next one is the sheriff.
Whose position is that?
Uh,
Probably need to get more information on that.
In other words, can we table that one?
Just kidding.
66.
You talking about it?
Okay, the sheriff, 5% stipend for narcotics positions. 8 people, total cost $23,878, effective July 1. Hazard duty, 24/7. This is justification.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I don't think nobody spoke a word yet, but I heard. Was that,
No, I'm not myself personally, because my understanding is he has to put his 5% in stipend plus the 3% included.
That
And
is-
none of the rest of them is getting that, so.
that's
I'm not
what the
comfortable
request
with
is.
that.
This would be in addition to any COLA,
That's
Yes, sir.
Right.
whatever
That's
the
right.
COLA is.
That's it.
Anyone say yes? Doesn't sound like it.
Well, could you drop that 5%? Let them come on in with COLA.
Yeah,
They
they'll
would
get the
be
COLA.
involved in COLA.
That.
So they'll
well,
get
I'm saying-
3%.
I'm saying drop the 5% and then give them the COLA,
Well, it don't matter, we get a cold.
Well, they're gonna get that if
Right.
we do it for everybody else, yes,
Right.
they will. So what you're
Well, then
saying,
we drop the 5% then.
Okay.
We got 3%.
Okay. The 2 positions for narcotics, one was grant funded, that has ended. And the asset forfeiture funded position, that he's asking that both of them be moved to the general fund. Total $143,694. To who?
Just Pat, give me half on this, pass them out. I had asked Janet to go back and look at how we handled this position when we approved it, and she has just,
Need one more?
Yeah.
you take just a minute and read what this is. When we first agreed to do this, they presented it to us, and this is, my point to make here is how careful we need to be when we approve employees under a grant program. And what happens when the grant program's out, we always discuss it. So just read what was said there, and I just thought it was something we need to review in making this decision. And again, my point here is not totally specific to this position, but just to caution the board when we approve positions for short-term grant positions, that how cautious we need to be. Z, I'm not sure, I understand this different from what you presented it. I think what we're asking for is to fund K-Mac salary, and then the lieutenant that works with him on the same program, which is now paid with asset forfeiture, to fund that position and no longer fund it with asset forfeiture. Is that not what we're doing?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And the K-Mac position is for 9 months.
Okay, why is it for 9 months? Because the
Grant
grant
ends.
runs on through September. Okay,
Right.
I got you. All right. Anybody got any thought on it? I've got one, but I'd like to hear y'all first. Nobody gonna say anything?
Could it not be handled still with asset forfeiture money?
Well, where I was going, Wayne, is to maybe split the baby and go ahead and take one or the other of them and let the sheriff continue covering the other with asset forfeiture. As you see in the dialogue on the comments that day, it was hoped that the asset forfeiture would grow enough to continue this program just on revenue. I don't know if it has or whether it hadn't. There's no doubt the program has done extremely well. I mean, y'all get your sheriff reports every morning. You know what these guys do. They are excellent. This K-Mac, I know, is excellent at what he does. I don't see the program go away. But on the other hand, I would be supportive of picking that position up and then letting the sheriff continue to fund the other one with what the group generates in revenue.
According to the sheriff or one of his
Yeah,
assistants,
I know there's an answer there.
they're saying that they can't use asset forfeiture for salaries, even though they've done it in the past. And as I said earlier, they're buying a car right now with asset forfeiture money. So according to him, they're not supposed to use.
Well, which is it? Is it they can't use it, or they're buying a car with it?
Oh, they are buying a car
Can they use it?
to buy a car.
No, can they use it for salaries, because they used it before?
They indicated they couldn't.
I think it's there's some very specific rules on the use, and I'm not sure about, there's something that they've just recently found out, or I don't know if it's a change in how it's funded, but there's conversation on what they can use asset forfeiture money for, and we'll have to get some more specifics on where that terminology is, how they were funding it, and now
I
making
almost rather entertain the vehicle, look at the possibilities for the vehicle versus the employment. The vehicle is a capital expense one time. This is forever.
Not that vehicle.
What type vehicle is it?
I'm just saying, none of his vehicles are one-time expenditures, they're reoccurring.
Well, I mean, they reoccur at some point.
Right, yeah.
But
Yeah.
generally, they're classified as capital expense. You wouldn't have to
I-
replace it
I
next year.
understand, Yeah. I'm just nervous about saying the sheriff's vehicles are one-time expenditures.
Um,
And then too, when they get grants and it's upon the commissioners approving it, otherwise they won't get them. If we don't, and I know we have this concern that the board may have to pick them up, fund them if they want to continue with them after grants run out. But, they can apply for them, and if we don't approve them, they don't get them.
You know, the COPS program was, everybody structured it so you do, over a 3-year period, a decreasing amount of the grant, so you were easing into it, because you had to commit after 3 years, you were gonna maintain that position. This is a 2-year, I think, Governor's Crime Commission grant. And we just need to be aware in the future when these come to us for new positions that we have to assume that they're not gonna be refunded.
Well, I think we all understand and assume that now. And I think that's pretty obvious if you look at the discussion that took place on the day it was approved.
Could we approve the first one, tell them we want the second one to continue like it is, and allow y'all time to work with him and let him, convince you that it can't be done, and then bring it back to us if we need to?
I'd be glad to.
Is that okay with everybody? I'm not saying do away with this position, I think you probably need the position, but I don't know how you can do it for 2 years and then all of a sudden you can't do it no more. And he's also, as he said, bought a library. Well, he's paid for the library, so he don't have that expense anymore.
And he continues to get asset forfeiture money. You know, they've got 8 people in this position. I don't know if they're filled or not filled. I mean, I know most of them are filled. You know, he may be able to slide that person into a vacant position at some point. With 8 people, it's only a matter of time before you
That's true, there's
have a
8
vacancy.
of them there.
Yeah, of course, these 2 are part of that 8.
Those 2 are part of that 8?
Yeah. The 76 captain
Okay,
and the 72 lieutenant.
okay, part of the 8 up there, I know what
Yeah.
you're saying now, I got you.
Part of the 8 people.
Yep, where you're trying to get 5%, I'll call it,
Yeah.
yep.
I'm not sure why that new salary is different than this one, but
Well, what I suggest is we approve the first one, the second one, hold it until such time as they determine that it can't be done.
it's a little different. Okay,
Everybody okay with that?
You might as well go ahead and approve them both. Because the sheriff's already said, I'm good with what you say.
Okay,
So we're doing the first one.
yes.
doing the first one, we're gonna ask him to continue to use asset forfeiture for the second one, or if there's a vacancy, put that person in that vacancy.
And if you get into it, Mr. Lamb, and there's a way, as Mr. Outlaw suggested, that you can take the same amount of dollars and pay for something else that is legal, tell us how you arrange it, if it's a car or whatever.
That's right, okay, I'll do that. Next is a reclass, $3,190, 69 sergeant to a 72 lieutenant.
Well, this just comes very convoluted with a lot of other things going on. And I don't know that we are prepared today to resolve the second issue of it.
Which second issue?
Well, this is tied in with the radio situation. This particular position is. If you read it.
No, I thought the next position,
I think he wants to replace.
The next position is to replace the one that we're getting ready to move from the sergeant to the lieutenant.
That's correct. But this position is then
Right.
going to take that same position and move it up from one level to, not that same person, but that position. Those two are tied together in the process.
Three people involved.
Yeah. Unless you got a recommendation today, Mr. Lamb, on where you are with that.
it's still in limbo.
Yep, that's what I thought.
But I'm thinking I'm thinking the second position here is the new position to replace that person.
It is.
So that's the one we don't necessarily need to fund now.
Well, that is that, but the first one, is, that replaces the position. The lieutenant upgrade replaces the person.
You understand that?
This new deputy is going to become a lieutenant, replacing a captain
No, there's somebody else that is gonna move
into the,
into the lieutenant job, and then that person on the second is gonna replace the person that's moving to the lieutenant's job. Is the way I understand it.
That's a new position.
I got you. I got you.
One of them's upgrade, one of them's a new position.
Right.
Right.
One of them's an upgrade, and
If
it's
you-
and the second one replaces the duties that the first one is currently doing, except for the partly.
If you end up not doing that item, you won't need either one of these. It's the short and the long of it.
Right.
Then who's gonna do it? I mean, when you get to this point, or is it something we're gonna have to do anyway?
Well, on the radio, Dan, it's a matter of who ends up looking after those radios.
For
Whether it's
EMS
For
and
EMS, whether it's the person in the sheriff's department or the person in the EMS department. Yeah, I don't think the manager has made that decision yet.
I tentatively made the decision to allow one person to do it all. But that was a tentative decision. We're still looking at it.
Questions?
And quite frankly, even if we let that one person do it all, I'm not sure we need to have the additional person. If that person's currently doing radios for the sheriff's department, I'm assuming that's about half his time. So I don't understand it.
Well, I understand it, but I don't think you have made your decision on what you want to do yet. But I don't want to talk for you. I think it's an item we need to table until you determine how you're gonna handle that position, is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
And we tabling, what, classification?
That was first.
76, 72?
Those first two items,
76 and 72?
76 and 72.
66 and 66, yeah. I'm looking at your classification.
69 and 66, what we talking about, Fred?
Yeah, you talking about these, talking about your radio.
When I agreed that
and
that
your
person
lieutenant.
was
I'm
gonna,
tabling this one and this one.
Yeah, okay.
when I tentatively agreed that that person from the sheriff's department would deal with the fire department and EMS radios with the assistance of somebody in EMS, I was not informed that we would require a person to take the place of that person. And I have been informed since the budget process that that is his request.
Who's gonna pay, I mean, so, I see what you're talking about, you're putting it all in the sheriff's budget right here.
Yeah.
Are you gonna split it? Part EMS, part Sheriff's Department, or you gonna have it all?
EMS already has someone employed that can handle those radios. Now, it's gonna require cooperation, with the Sheriff's Department person, but again, I was tentatively okay with this person doing it from the Sheriff's Department. I just did not know that that meant by the gift of allowing his person to help with the EMS and the fire department radios, that he was gonna need another position.
So the bottom line is, we need to get it worked out, and then we do what we gotta do.
Exactly. Short and
I'll
long
go
run.
along with it.
He needs to work it out, suit the administration, and then we'll know what to do. Is that fair enough, Mr. Lane?
That's fine. The next two, I think the discussion earlier was to delay that, or not do that.
I think it was not funded at this time.
Okay.
Transport.
Okay. The next position is 2-day-a-week evidence technician at a 72, new position. Right now, it's a part-time position, 2 days a week with $10,000. The request is to make it a full-time position, make it a 72 evidence tech, and it would cost $55,463. Apparently, this person who he likes and says is doing a great job wants a full-time position, and he thinks he's gonna lose her unless he makes her full-time at that salary.
Yeah, I've been waiting on the other two up there and give him that one.
Well,
Do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, I just said.
No, I asked the manager.
well, I'm a little concerned that
Let me wait.
we're creating a position for a person
You're setting a precedent.
that is getting the job done right now for $10,000 a year, part-time, and the fact that she wants full-time work, well,
How do
if he
we-
can't find another position in his 100 positions for her, then we're faced with the decision, do we spend $55,000 so this particular person will stay with the county? Or do we find another position already budgeted for her within the sheriff's department? Or do we allow her to go get a full-time job elsewhere and find someone else part-time to be the evidence
But
person?
how do we know that part-time is getting the job done?
He says she's really good and that,
Yeah, it'd be good, but it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting the job done.
you know,
I'm talking about
2
part-time.
days a week, 10,000 versus 5 days a week, 55
I
is how I
mean,
look at it.
I understand that, but I'm saying that 2 days a week, he says she's doing a good job, I guess, when she's there. But is that adequate in getting the job done? And that's my question, and I doubt it. He probably said she's doing a good job because he wants her to stay on his staff. But my point is she getting the job done just working 2 days a week?
Well, this is a new temporary part-time position that I approved with him because he wanted someone who could organize his evidence.
How long ago was that? Do you know?
Do y'all know?
I think it was just this year, but I can't
Yeah,
remember.
it's been, I think, first of the year, first of the budget year.
It's part of the creep, isn't it?
you know, it's just, again, hard for me to recommend, as much as I would like to accommodate him, I think we're creating a position for a person rather than hiring a person for a position.
It still goes back to my question. Then I listened. First place, in my opinion, this is only working
He never said anything
part-time
about
2
the job
days.
not getting done.
Uh,
He never said that.
Well, the point is, it was needed in the first place. Just working 2 days a week.
What's, you say you wanna fund it?
Yeah, since we are not gonna do the other ones two right now, I would say fund it.
Anybody else want to fund this fully, full-time position? No one else?
Next.
And then I would say, you ought to cancel the position, it ought to be canceled out altogether, working 2 days a week, and I get no job done over there 2 days.
He says she's really good
Yeah,
at what she's
well, he'll
doing.
tell you that 'cause he want to keep her.
Move on. Okay, quartermaster. Again, what does that position
Don't
do?
work that one off.
Oh, I think he said it came.
He agreed to remove that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Said we didn't need it.
Okay, the three new positions for the courthouse, they are necessary.
Do you recommend those?
I recommend them.
Ask the question.
Okay?
Ask.
Any objection to funding those three positions? Next thing is the jail 5% request. Do we agree that they'll get the COLA like every other employee? Any objection to that?
Have you, I know he sent me something a month ago about this situation. Did any other commissioner get it, or did I just get it? About the jail employees comparing it with surrounding counties? You didn't get it?
I got the first one that he used, Wake, and then I sent him back an email saying, and I suggested some other counties surrounding Wake.
Right.
And I think he has sent or given us information what the averages are, but I don't have it.
Based on what he sent me, looking at it, it appears like there is a need there to do something with those employees based on turnover. I think the proper thing to do would be ask the staff to either internally or externally study that particular position situation prior to making the decision and see if 5% corrects it. Does it take more than 5%, or does it not need anything? But just based on the counties that he showed, which is the surrounding counties, we must have an issue with pay at that position. But, you know, of course,
You're gonna hear that same debate from all departments.
Yeah,
Let me just-
Donna, before she left with DSS, did,
I agree with that. That's where I'm leading up to.
We just canceled out 5% up there, and now we're talking about adding 5%.
No, I ain't through talking yet. I'm not saying let's do this. But I do think you've got some, I'm real sensitive to turnover rates wherever they are.
Yeah.
If you continually got turnover in the same positions in the county, particularly where you got multiple employees and they're going to adjoining counties, a lot of times that's gonna be a pay issue. Or either you got a person that's hard to work for, one of the two most of the time. I'm just asking in this process to have the staff to look at that, if it's DSS and if it's this position, let's take a good look at the turnover rates and see what's causing it, and we may need to come back and visit this one.
If I was gonna look at turnover rates, I'd look at them across the board and see if I had issues in other areas.
Well, that's right, look at the whole county in turnover rates, and look, go at it from that
You
standpoint.
may see that in EMS and social services.
Well, you may.
We
While you're
definitely
doing
do
that,
in
see where
social
we
services.
stand as far as comparison with pay, and see how we stand as far as turnover rates with
Well,
other
that-
counties.
that's
Do they just
exactly
come
what-
and go, or,
Sure.
you know, or
And
is it pay?
you got exit interviews that should give you some idea of why they left. But turnover in a organization this large is not good, it's expensive, if you got a fairly high turnover rate in any department.
Sometimes it can cost you more to hire than it does to keep.
Well, that's
You
my
know,
point,
I mean,
exactly. Rather than just say, no, we ain't gonna do that, I'd like the answer to be, we're gonna do some pay studies in selected parts of the county where the turnover rate is high.
As long as we do them internally.
Internally, that's fine. Good, okay. Is that okay, Mr. Lane?
Fine. Okay. Cooperative extension, part-time money for an additional person at the farmer's market to help Jimmy. Everybody good with that? Planning and inspections, change a permit specialist to a planning tech, $2,400. Everybody good with that?
And I got yesterday, that's the two ladies that sit out front.
I believe so. And one of them is actually doing,
Well, each,
The work.
I think she said both of them do the same thing, one of them
Right.
classified a little bit higher, and the one that's underclassified is also bilingual, which is important in there.
right. Deputy Health Director, that's a position, he said he's got a position that's funded this year. I'm not sure we got it in next year's budget for $52,000 that he could eliminate and use those funds to oh yeah, here it is, total change, 18,969. I see, 52,000 is the current position that he would get rid of, and the new salary would be 68. I do think it's very important that we have a succession plan there, and he's gone many years without a deputy health director. Most counties do have one, especially ones our size, and I would recommend we fund that.
What's
Okay.
the new position cost, 68?
68,240 versus 52,531 that he's eliminating. A total cost with fringe $19,000.
So he eliminating the position and creating another.
A higher position, a higher paying position.
He kinda indicated you were the author of this one, is that somewhat true?
Yes. Yes.
I do know that in watching and reading, a lot of counties struggle with finding a health director when they lose one. I mean, and there seems to be somewhat of some turnover in there. It does make sense that you should have somebody you're grooming in that department, hopefully to take his place, because he thinks he's gonna be there forever, and we all hope he is, but probably not gonna be.
Yeah.
I support this one myself.
Well, I have a question on it,
Go ahead, sir.
this was,
Hmm?
I knew it was gonna lead to this when we merged, while I voted against the merge.
I don't see it has anything to
Yeah,
do with
well,
birds.
It really doesn't. It was,
No, I'm talking about, I said then he was gonna need some help there, deputy director.
He
And,
got-
everybody said,
I don't think it's a matter of him needing help. I think it's a matter of the administration worried about a succession plan.
Right.
so you're gonna pay somebody all
You're
that
taking
just to
you're
sit
taking
there
a
to
position
learn?
that already exists and you're just upgrading it.
and we've got a situation where it costs him $1,000 a month to work. If he retired right now,
Seriously?
yeah. He's
Well.
pre-Bailey, he doesn't have to pay tax.
Well,
It's not a spring
He
chicken.
doesn't have no intention of retiring.
Right, but at some point, he may
I see.
decide.
Stone the kettle.
And one thing I have mentioned to
And
him,
his mother is still living.
well, I don't wanna say,
I'm okay, I think we're okay with this.
okay,
Sounds like everybody's in pretty much agreement.
Well, I
Maybe
think it's
Fred.
very important, and I'm not sure we do it enough with administration, to always be figuring out what's gonna happen, just like what we found out yesterday. I don't know whether you got an idea what's gonna happen in the tax department or not, but
Well, one of the things, if you recall, when we talked earlier in the year as a group, is that we need to have some succession plan.
exactly, in every department,
Every department.
yeah.
it was in my evaluation
Exactly.
that I needed to work on that.
It was, I remember that,
Yeah,
yep.
And this is a part of it.
yeah, that's, yeah.
I'm glad you're working.
Glad I
We-
read it.
We can take that off you.
You glad I read the evaluation?
We can take that off your evaluation next year, maybe. Well, I think it should have become more important for all of us last year when we lost 2 or 3 key people during the year. And you look at all of them, and there's gonna be more coming.
Yep.
Mhm. Yep. We're saving a lot of money with going to the state healthcare, but as more and more people retire and we're having to pay through the ACA individual plans for retirees pre-65, it's becoming more expensive. Now, the net is still in our favor, particularly what it would be if we had
Sure.
stayed self-insured.
Absolutely.
But that cost is increasing.
That Medicaid, the 2 most important things this board has done in my career.
Yeah. The next is DSS. The first position's contingent upon a grant. Then she's,
Well, let's talk about that since we just had a discussion. Is that a permanent grant or a temporary grant?
It's a 2-year grant.
Okay. Is it a work, an order of work that would be completed in a 2-year period? Or is this one we'd be looking back at in 2 years and would almost have to fund?
All I can tell you is what she said yesterday, which was if the grant ran out, she felt like with that position and the other positions that she has just like that within her department,
She'd
wouldn't
have
be doing the
nutrition.
very same work, but she could keep that person employed.
By
By
nutrition?
putting them into, yes.
Okay,
they have
okay.
such turnover in
Yeah.
that department that,
Have you got that in writing? I'm kidding. Somewhat kidding with you.
It's all being recorded.
Okay.
2 years from now, we're gonna say, well,
Yeah, okay.
we got a reclass, let's skip down there, a reclass from a vacant position.
Where did you, oh, okay.
Yes,
Reclass.
and,
So
let's see.
before you go on that first one, then we're okay with the 75,000. Does the grant pay all of it or some percentage of it? or
All of
what?
it. It's
So
100% grant,
This whole
and,
thing is 100% grant.
and we will make sure she realizes that if that money runs out,
You got to find a hole for that position.
yeah, yeah. But she's got like several openings right now,
She does.
yeah.
I know she does.
Now, the 4 new positions that she's asking for, and attributing the need to NC Fast and certain regulations. One's a 50% federal funded, 2 75% federal funded, and 1 65% federal funded. So, the net to the county, if you ignore that last one, we'll come back to that last one.
You said it was 50, 75, 75, and 60.
It
Yeah.
should be on the side.
It's on your sheet there.
I'm using the one I wrote on yesterday,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, you might want to look at both of them, because there's another number coming up that's going,
Yeah,
Okay.
and then the last
Help
one
you a
is
whole lot.
50% federal, so,
when it all shakes out, it's costing you $12,000 a position to put those positions in there.
12,000 a position.
Yes, sir.
yeah. 83,000 for the 5 positions.
5?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
if you take the last one.
Well, it would be,
It
you'd have to
includes
take
that
all
grant.
6 of them.
Take that, that includes that grant.
But this 83, I thought was net county funding and took that out.
It look-
The
Did-
164 includes the 46,786
Of the grant.
of the grant.
It didn't yesterday, but it does today.
Right, that is
She
correct.
changed that from yesterday.
So the cost to the county to do those are 83,000.
For all 6 of them,
$739.
83,000.
I just wonder how that, I asked this question yesterday, but how does the federal, where the rest of this money comes from, the feds, just let every jurisdiction hire who they want to, they pick up 75% of it? I mean, that, it looks like to me it'd have to be a buy-in or an approval process.
Yeah, exactly.
Might
It's
be
just
why,
like-
why we got a X billion-dollar federal
Yeah.
deficit, I guess.
Yeah, they do
Yep.
that, things different than the state and the
They sure
locals.
do.
Are y'all good with that?
Give me 1 second, I gave an erroneous figure. It's actually $16,000 per position that it costs us.
Right.
I thought it was 7.
Any objection? Okay. Senior services. New position at the senior center. This is the position that Michelle had when Stacy was there. Since Stacy left, Michelle has been doing Stacy's position, has moved to Stacy's position, and her old position has been vacant. So she's requesting that that position be funded. And I think on the right hand of me, would recommend that be funded.
What is on the right hand?
I agree.
Oh, the right hand, I'm talking. I took it in a political direction, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was wondering how the right hand recommended.
I agree with that.
It is a busy place.
Are y'all good with that position
Yeah.
being restored?
She quoted numbers yesterday where participation levels continue to decline.
Decline.
Climb.
Incline.
Incline.
Yes, sir. And I would have to think with opening the second one, some of Michelle's time is gonna have to be shared in getting the other one at least the first year on track, which would pull her away from a little bit more. I'm fine. I'm talking to myself, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Trying to convince myself.
Okay, the 2 positions at the Southern Nash, we can change the effective date if that's not realistic, to save a little money there, but I definitely think you need 2 people in that.
What's the completion date of that project?
We're saying October.
You were saying October, you thought that was kind
I
of
think
tight.
you had it done.
I think it's quick, but you can't hire them the day it opens and send them down there. I mean, you're gonna have to train these people a little bit.
Right, and we've already talked about that. What she may end up doing is the young lady that she ends up moving into the senior center coordinator at her place. She may shift that one down there to start it off while she trains the other one in-house with her,
Okay.
and then put them down there. So we've already started planning how that would happen.
Well, you just made a statement against yourself, but you might not realize that, but go ahead.
Let's make that, if y'all are good, I do think we need to hire 2 people for down there. Make that effective November 1. That means it'll be 2/3 of a year instead of 3/4 of a year.
I agree, you need 2 people, but I'm thinking, you know, to start off with, it's probably gonna be low, and it's just gonna go up, so, I mean, with that, if you didn't need that person there all the time, would they be able to float back and forth?
That crowd that goes to Mount Pleasant now is gonna move up there, and they already got a full house to start with.
How many people work at Mount Pleasant?
Work there, it's
For-
only
for us,
one.
for
It's
you.
only one, but
It's
that's
gonna
only
take off
open
pretty
2
quick.
partial days a week.
Yeah. How many go over there, participants do they have?
We've had over 100 folks to come in and take part in individual programs.
So it ain't like it's starting from one and going.
Well,
up.
that's true.
That
But
crowd
is it
going
ever-
up.
At
not
any
every
given
day.
time, it's more like
2 days a week.
25.
That,
It's more
that,
like 20, 25 that are there.
that part-time person, what happens to that part-time person?
Well, she actually works both Mount Pleasant and at the senior center. So, you know, she will be going down to the other one as well.
There's enough work for, between the two.
There are, and I will say that actually when she started this budget, I started to help her with it. There were 2 other positions being requested, and so we got rid of those 2 and got it back to what we felt like was a reasonable request to start it off.
Have you had any discussion with Nash Community regarding them doing some programs there that may be needed?
I haven't, but I know with the computer class, we've been talking to them for a couple of years about the fact that we would
That was part
want.
of the thing at night, maybe those classes could be provided if there was a need.
Yes.
Will we still need that part-time person? If you've got another person at the senior center and 2 people here, will we still need that part-time money?
The one that we currently have
Right.
is grant funded.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's 100% grant funded.
So everybody go with November 1 for funding purposes?
Yes, sir.
And the final position is Parks and Rec, new position, program supervisor for the Miracle Park at Cooper's, effective January 1.
I'm okay with that. You'll build a park. You gotta
Anybody
have some other
object
work
to
there.
that?
Have somebody there.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Our work is done, ladies and gentlemen.
What's the total tally?
5
That's
minutes.
it. She's gonna work on it.
I'm not gonna ask you.
So then are you gonna come back and at a later date discuss the COLA?
The what?
COLA?
We're gonna plug the COLA in that y'all have approved and make
See
sure,
how it works.
try to make it work.
Okay.
So we are gonna schedule one more budget session.
Sure.
That y'all present revenues and what we've done today,
It'll be,
prior to asking us to adopt the budget.
yeah, it'll be prior to my formal presentation.
Okay.
We could do that, in the afternoon of our meeting first meeting in May, if you want, or we can do it sooner. I'm gonna present the budget on the 16th of May.
I would prefer to do it on the day that we don't have another meeting,
Okay.
in case we have a lengthy discussion.
Okay.
So Ms. Richardson will be with us the whole time. We are there. Go get on the bus.
Yeah.
Fred, these goals changed any, or are they identical?
No, what they do,
In short session.
after the session is over, the long session,
Yeah.
and
They go back
at
to
the
it.
beginning of the year, we look at what was accomplished.
And it will come off.
It comes off,
Do we just
and,
have
and
No.
the things that were not, will stay on if the committees, the different committees say, hey, it may be, in some cases, they say, well, it doesn't look like we're gonna be able to get into traction with this, so we might as well take it off.
Not till we come up with a date. We're gonna try to establish a date for the budget, excuse me, for the work session, and then I'll call for a vote to adjourn. Oh, you go and look at it and present it to us Monday. We'll be back together Monday.
That'll work.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Any further business of the board? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Combs, second by Mr. Bellfield. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Stand adjourned.
Said something like we-